In the world of elves, there is a striking difference in height between the wood elves, who typically reside in forests, and the dark elves, who inhabit a cluster of islands, a vast, fertile, yet mysterious archipelago. These dark elves have a unique custom. They are obsessed with peculiar research, especially concerning the soul. Sionne, a pivotal figure among the dark elves, shares a grand objective with the scientists working under her. Their focus is not merely on dominating humans, but rather on exploiting them. While the High Elves seek to eradicate humans, Sionne and her group aim to capture human souls, confine them within vessels, or even within crafted puppets to gain control. During a massive experiment, Sionne ordered all scientists to proceed immediately with their plan. But instead of succeeding, everything went awry. A black hole suddenly emerged from within the body of the human they were using as a test subject. From this black hole, a colossal dragon emerged. The dragon that would later be known as the Soul Dragon. This was no ordinary monster. It possessed the absolute power to dominate and absorb the soul of anyone who heard its roar. Sionne instantly went on high alert, ordering her scientists to prepare for battle. However, the Soul Dragon proved far superior. With a single roar, the dragon effortlessly raised the shield and deflected the elves' attacks. Yet, amidst the chaos, Sionne grew only more intrigued. To her, the dragon was not a threat, but a golden opportunity for research. Its power, capable of absorbing all souls, a feat that would take the scientists years to comprehend, was achieved by the dragon with ease. Sionne was in awe, deeming the dragon an extraordinary being. When the dragon realized Sionne showed no remorse despite the deaths of many of her colleagues, it became curious. The Soul Dragon thought, "This elf woman has absolutely no guilt over the fall of her comrades." This very curiosity prompted the dragon to make an offer. It would assist Sionne's research on the condition that it be given more souls. Sionne agreed without hesitation. For Sionne, anything would be sacrificed for the sake of her research. Even her own comrades, or perhaps the entire dark elf race, would be expendable if it served her study. Following this agreement, their location was enveloped in a brilliant light, as if the dragon's power merged with the dark elf's research. Since then, it became clear that Sionne and the Soul Dragon's path was one of deep darkness. Meanwhile, Mei reported to Light that the outside world had its own set of problems. 3 major phenomena had appeared in the dark elf region. Number 1, ancient structures, archaeological ruins, had sprung up, now inhabited by migrating Moro people who settled there. Number 2, an entity core of the dark god had also appeared in the area, bringing both an aura of death and unlimited treasure. And number 3, buildings saturated with mana energy were increasingly prevalent, making the region a focal point of attention for many nations. Due to the escalating chaos, the Dark Elves ultimately requested the Masters, their term for top-tier adventurers, to investigate the area. One of these groups was the Black Pierrot Party. For those who don't recall this party's origin, you might want to watch Season 1 first. Furthermore, Black Pierrot holds a personal vendetta against Sionne. Come what may, they have sworn revenge, even if it means confronting the entire might of the Dark Elves. The Dark Elves themselves have grand ambitions for expansion. However, they had previously been defeated by the High Elves. The White Knights, the High Elves' elite force, had once decimated the Dark Elves' strongest group, known as the Isolated Blades. The leader of the Isolated Blades was the father of a prominent figure who now lives with a burning desire for revenge. Their promise is singular: to avenge that destruction by obliterating the High Elves. The situation is further complicated by the sudden appearance of a mysterious tower. Its existence has strained diplomatic relations between the Elven Kingdom and other factions. Many believe something is being concealed, especially since Sionne still harbors her insane goal of gathering human souls to use as a form of blessing, then utilizing it as the ultimate source of power. Meanwhile, Yudo is preparing for his mission alongside Ayla and Laye. The 3 appear to be a normal team, but their dynamic is quite complex. Ayla and Laie are sisters who frequently argue, though they genuinely care for each other. Yudo often reminds them to get along, though it's sometimes difficult due to their respective egos. From their perspective, they remain convinced that the Dark Elves are determined to weaponize humans to destroy the High Elves and the White Knights. Their greatest hope still rests on Sionne, who is currently confined in a special prison called Military Base Mora. Yudo's team, however, believes that sooner or later, Sionne must be freed, as she is their trump card. In addition to the massive investment they've made in her research, Yudo also seeks a substantial personal gain. Yudo secretly aspires to become the master himself, as achieving that status would automatically place him far above the White Knights, the High Elves' pride. For this reason, Yudo actually intends to dominate the laboratory dungeon and ultimately kick Sionne out. On the other side, Light, Nemumu, and Gold finally arrive at Kojima Island, where Sionne and the Dark Elves' laboratory is headquartered. Light explains that the laboratory was originally acquired through deception, having been stolen from him years ago. Tragically, what was stolen has now become a threat to Sionne herself. Gold comments on the dreadful state of the Elven Kingdom, noting that trash is scattered everywhere and rats are scurrying about. Gold feels it scarcely deserves to be called a kingdom, it's more like a dump. Light concurs with Gold's criticism of the situation, stating that this is the inevitable result of relying solely on the support of incompetent and perpetually oppressed humans. The outcome is chaotic and utterly poor. Nemumu notes that the dismal state of affairs is also a slight advantage for their party, as it helped them secure a letter of recommendation from the Dagas Guild to conduct a search in this kingdom, allowing them to proceed directly to Kojima Island by ship. During the final stretch before docking, Light is silent, strategizing for the mission while listening to the endless, trivial bickering between Nemumu and Gold. Upon reaching the dock, Light is slightly surprised because the laboratory's condition is a stark contrast to the Elven Kingdom they just left. Here, they observe a beauty that is more akin to a vacation resort than a laboratory. After arriving, Light takes a short rest and sleeps. There, he dreams of his past. He sees a small house, his father, mother, and his older sister Yume welcoming him into a home, reflecting a harmonious family life. Light then wakes up, realizing it was just a dream. He leaves his resting place and prepares to explore the island with Gold and Nemumu. Along the way, Light recalls hearing that the Dark Elf Nation is renowned for its active research, and that elite, state-recognized researchers are granted special treatment or privileges there. Suddenly, Light is greeted by Yudo, a Dark Elf leader. He introduces himself as the leader of the Sword of the Island and an A-rank adventurer. Yudo firmly states that adventurers are permitted to assist with the research, but they are forbidden from taking anything from the laboratory. In return, they are promised a substantial reward. However, not everyone is pleased with Black Pierrot's arrival. Some beastmen in the Dark Elf ranks deem the presence of humans on this mission ridiculous. To them, Black Pierrot will only be a burden because of the human in their ranks, referring to Light. But Light pays them no mind. He views this as a standard mission and intends to proceed. In fact, the Black Pierrot group is known as the Black Clown, a party with a formidable reputation. Even Yudo himself is impressed by the party's capabilities, especially after hearing the story of Black Pierrot's victory over Kaido, the legendary former White Knight. Yudo is also attracted to Nemumu, one of the group members, finding her both beautiful and tough. Yudo even offers Nemumu a spot in the new isolated Blades group he aims to rebuild. He promises her wealth, luxury, and glory. But Nemumu declines. She states that working with Light, one of her loyal colleagues, is sufficient. Finally, Yudo can only accept her decision. He then directs everyone to prepare to enter the underground laboratory, which also serves as a military base. He reminds them not to quarrel with one another and to refrain from actions that could jeopardize the mission. From the outside, the laboratory appears to be an ordinary, unsuspecting building. But upon entering, the interior is incredibly vast, like another dimension. Inside, Light senses something approaching. And indeed, a figure resembling Sionne appears before him. Everyone was stunned, believing Sionne had been freed. However, the figure was only an imitation, a set of 3 identical clones, immediately confirming it was a fake. These illusions immediately attacked the Black Pierrot party. The Black Pierrot group calmly withstood the attacks from the Sionne clones. Upon observation, they realized that these clones were creations based on the power of the Soul Dragon, a level of technology or magic that could only be achieved at an extremely high level. Light found this ridiculous. Even though he was level 9,999, creating clones with this kind of power was nearly impossible. Light even compared it to Irete, who was the same level as him but could only summon 1 clone per day. Light then considered that if someone were forced to summon an abomination from another world, the entire military base could be annihilated. Light knew that even for a mage of Naraka's caliber, summoning such a creature would take more than a day. This mission would clearly not be easy. Light and his group had to delve deeper, as everything they encountered was merely the beginning of a larger, darker plan. For some, it might be normal to consider abominations from other worlds as commonplace. However, even a low-level abomination was strong enough to match or even defeat Captain Hardy. Because of this, Light thought it impossible for Sionne to have summoned something so chaotic. The creature was most likely the result of interference from another master operating behind the scenes. This information put Light on high alert, because if another master was involved, the situation could quickly spiral out of control. Amidst his anxiety, Light felt something strange. A fleeting image of Yume, his own sister, flashed in his mind. His resolve wavered. It was difficult to believe Yume could be involved in a military base affair like this. But Light knew it was probably just an illusion. Rather than being swept away by emotion, Light chose to retreat, deciding to return another time. In the process, Light found a longer, additional entrance, a kind of hidden route. He immediately reported this information to Yudo. Yudo responded coldly to the report. He asserted that his primary target was to capture that human, in other words, Light, since Light was the only human in the Black Pierrot party. Yudo believed the human held a great blessing or gift that could be used for research. Yudo was, in fact, incredibly astute at quickly analyzing a person's power. Proof of this was that after only a brief look into Light's eyes, he knew Light possessed an extraordinary ability, and Yudo desperately wanted to gouge out that eye and take it. On the other hand, Eri was of the opinion that the interworld portal that had opened earlier seemed to have been a coincidence, not intentional. The portal could not last long, especially if forced. This fact revealed that Sionne was still alive, but being held captive. The Soul Dragon still required a supply of new souls to maintain its form, and these souls were typically placed into lifeless bodies resembling the form of its summoner. If the portal were allowed to remain open, the risks were insane. The entire Dark Elf archipelago could be destroyed, and the disaster could even spread to the main continent of Naraka. Light realized the gravity of the situation. Eri was determined to close the portal, while Light and his group chose to destroy the Dark Elf laboratory. After all that was done, Light was resolved to take his revenge on Sionne. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Naraka Palace, the Anelia sisters were managing a stack of cards belonging to Light. They knew these cards were no ordinary items, as they could be the key to facing a much more dangerous enemy. Also present was a mohawked man who was helping sort through the cards that needed to be prepared for Light. The man also seemed curious about the number and type of cards Light possessed. Anelia mentioned that Light would surely be happy and proud of the mohawked man for helping to tidy up, but she suggested that it was better not to know too much about what shouldn't be known. Shortly after, Light arrived at the card storage area with Mei. The Anelia sisters immediately greeted their master, though they were initially surprised by Light's sudden arrival, as usually only Mei or Eri came to collect the cards Light needed. In short, Light immediately gave clear instructions to prepare all of the Naraka cards for the upcoming confrontation. However, Light would not carry the cards. The Anelia sisters themselves would secure them. When Light briefly explained why he needed all of his strongest cards, Anelia became very worried for him. But Mei reassured Anelia, saying that besides their master, Eri and Mei would also be his personal escorts while he entered the military base. Before heading to the military base dungeon, Light told Eri and Mei to use the SSR stealth card to eliminate and erase their presence. They then immediately left using a teleportation skill. The journey into the military base grew more intense. Light's group had to fight various ghostly monsters inhabiting the dark corridors. Finally, they saw a monster threatening a small child. Light was instantly moved, thinking the child might be Yume. With quick reflexes, Light successfully rescued the child. However, the moment shocked Light slightly because the child was not Yume. But that wasn't what confused Light. What puzzled him more was the child's origin, why they were suddenly inside this dungeon. And strangely, they were still alive. Light even considered that the child might be a victim of an experiment. Gold, who was in the group, easily eliminated the dangerous creature that was after the child, using the Judgment Flare skill. Light, still holding the child, noticed that the child's body appeared faint and transparent, truly like a ghost. After Light coaxed the child about their identity and origin, the child finally confessed that their name was Momo. Momo said they only remembered waking up in this dark place and then seeing Light's group. Unfortunately, they couldn't recall their parents, only having a vague feeling that they were down below. This explanation was delivered with tears and confusion. The journey continued, with Momo joining the group by riding on Gold's back. Gold casually remarked to Momo that this journey seemed to be an unusual one and immediately dashed off, making Momo so happy that they screamed loudly. Namumu told Momo to be quiet because they were being too noisy, but Gold added in a relaxed tone that it was normal. Children are full of energy. Midway through the journey, Light quietly asked Mei, the calmer one, if bringing Momo was the right decision. Mei answered calmly that if Light wanted to protect the child, he should do so. The decision remained Light's, and they would respect it. Fortunately, Momo showed no signs of being a dangerous monster in disguise. Light was still preoccupied, thinking he might be too fixated on the memory of his sister, Yume. That's why he wanted to take Momo and save them. The group finally arrived at the second floor. Light immediately activated his clairvoyance card to map the area, but the card couldn't activate. Eri, still in stealth mode, explained that sometimes certain places block the power of specific cards. Namumu immediately offered to clear the way with her skill and map the second floor since Light's clairvoyance card was unusable. It turned out that the method Namumu used to map the second floor was through high-resonance sound propagation. Perhaps more simply, it was like the area mapping method used by bats at night. Namumu reported that the surrounding area was safe, and they hadn't found anything suspicious. They finally continued their journey to the next location. After a brief, casual exchange with Momo to ease the tension, they eventually ran into Yudo again, along with the two sisters who always accompanied him. Light sensed a strange atmosphere in the encounter. Yudo admitted he was working hard to meet his superior's expectations, then backed away from the spot. Before leaving, Yudo made a veiled threat, suggesting Light might be the mysterious master that many were talking about. They said rumors about the existence of a master or similar entity were circulating in many kingdoms. Light became slightly interested in the conversation, thinking about Yudo's remark regarding a human who could be a master. Perhaps Yudo had more information about the master's existence and identity. Light tried to negotiate an exchange of information about the master that Yudo knew. Yudo grew even more interested in the offer, saying that Light knew about the master too. Light responded calmly, only asking them to be honest and reveal what they knew. For him, the deeper they ventured into the military base, the more crucial it was to know the secrets hidden there. However, the conversation quickly turned into a threat. Yudo asserted that at this depth, no one could hear them. So, if Light refused to speak, the consequence would be eternal death. This moment triggered a shocking reaction from Momo. Suddenly, Momo remembered something terrifying. With teary eyes, Momo told Light that they were the ones who had given eternal death to their entire village. This memory made Momo cry, blaming Yudo for the destruction of their family. Light responded coldly. Light ordered Namumu and Gold to capture their opponents, intending to interrogate them further and extract deeper information. With an arrogant swagger, Yudo scoffed. "Do you really think light can win against us, who are all rank A?" Yudo then cynically remarked that this was precisely why he hated humans, who possessed a gift skill. Yudo explained that this dungeon was indeed a place where strange things emerged. For example, Momo. Yudo suggested that the child was likely a deceased experiment victim who would become a ghost. Yudo also explained that the lab leader would use anything in their experiments, including humans, to obtain a gift. Furthermore, humans with gifts were extremely difficult to find in the slave market, so it was easier for them to kidnap people from nearby villages. Light became enraged upon hearing Yudo's rant, which treated human lives like toys to be taken, manipulated, and discarded when no longer useful. Yudo commanded Ayla to deal with Nemumu, and Laie to handle Gold, while he himself would advance to fight Light. Yudo was curious about just how powerful a person with a gift truly was. Ayla immediately attacked Nemumu with deep hatred. In her view, a human of Nemumu's caliber did not deserve to be there. Her attacks were brutal and full of fury. However, all the strikes were easily dodged. Nemumu remained calm, simply shifting her steps, frustrating her opponent. Finally, after the attacks continued without success, Nemumu delivered a simple retaliation, a clean kick that struck her opponent. It was a harsh blow for Ayla. How could a mere human injure her? Meanwhile, Gold, facing Laie, calmly delivered a rather lengthy sermon. The fight between Gold and Laie could not be called a contest, as it was completely one-sided. Even when Laie slammed her axe down, Gold easily blocked it. Gold lectured her, saying her strength was good, but it was more suited for chopping firewood than for fighting. Laie, confused as to why Gold could so casually withstand all her power, felt increasingly cornered. Gold then sarcastically said, "You should go back to school before you try to act tough and fight like this." In the other corner, Yudo confronted Light. He charged forward with all his might, but Light casually blocked the sword attack using the tip of his staff. Light even mocked Yudo, saying, "Such trashy strength, and you dare to bother a human." Light even joked that the sword was better suited for scything grass for livestock. Back in Nemumu and Ayla's fight, the vast difference in power was evident. Ayla attacked wildly, while Nemumu merely avoided the attacks with a bored demeanor. In short, after the flurry of missed blows, Ayla grew tired until she was finally kicked by Nemumu and sent flying. Nemumu felt the kick might have been excessive, as it sent Ayla a great distance. However, despite being cornered, Ayla still believed she had the upper hand. Ayla boasted that she had spread rose poison in the area, hoping it would slowly paralyze Nemumu. But Nemumu suddenly burst into laughter at the attempt. She said such cheap poison had no effect whatsoever. Nemumu claimed that such cheap stuff couldn't even be called poison. It was more like a cheap perfume sold in Kondit for 50,000 rupiah. In retaliation, Nemumu demonstrated an example of real poison called venom production. With a slight scratch on her opponent's body, Nemumu showed how pure poison worked, causing the victim to feel a tangible sense of horror. Nemumu even mocked that to be a poison user, one's own body should at least be immune to poison. And besides, the poison Ayla used was considered low grade by Nemumu. Nemumu was annoyed because Ayla hadn't listened to her explanation about the poison, as she had instantly died. Let's switch back to the Gold versus Laie fight. The fight began with a heated atmosphere. Laie had lost control, her emotions exploding, and she attacked Gold with full, angry, but sadly clumsy force. Gold, on the other hand, was still able to quickly withstand all the attacks while giving suggestions for better movements. Remaining calm, Gold reminded her that no matter how strong a person becomes, losing consciousness and self-control means forgetting everything. Laie, annoyed at being lectured constantly, used her frenzy axe to attack Gold with all her might. Gold calmly observed Laie's preparations, checking if her movements were correct for a fighter. Seeing Laie's increasingly heated behavior, Gold muttered internally, calling Laie a rough and sickening woman. Without thinking twice, Gold slammed Laie's body hard onto the ground with his shield. Gold himself gave a warning. If she wanted to gain more strength, she could use other magic tools. That was fine. But the opposite should never happen, that the magic tools controlled the human. Because if that happened, the result was ridiculous. Fainting in the middle of a fight, unable to distinguish between friend and foe, that was pure madness. Gold, growing bored with the one-sided fight, thought to himself that no matter how much Lai had changed, she was still just a normal human, no match for him, let alone for his master, Light. Gold was also confident he could defeat Lai Ye from behind with his own strategy. Gold gave his final piece of advice, noting that Lai Ye fundamentally had high tenacity, even if her brain was as stupid as expletive. We turn now to the battle between Yudo and Light. Light ordered Eri to use magic to prevent other parties from descending to the third floor, while Mei was instructed to eliminate the monsters in the surrounding area. Yudo appeared annoyed after being insulted by the brat who called his attack weak. Yudo thought that the magic staff Light was carrying had some kind of power that could block all physical attacks from his opponent. At that moment, Yudo unleashed a full boost move for a full activation of his magic item, releasing all his power. But Light merely stared blankly, seemingly unafraid. Light felt Yudo was wasting time and told him that if he intended to attack, he should do it seriously. Momo briefly cried out of fear from the effect of Yudo's power release, but Light, with his big brother instincts, immediately stroked Momo's head and calmed them. Light promised Momo they had nothing to worry about and that he would defeat Yudo. Light immediately went into serious mode, calling Yudo trash and saying he would show him the real difference in their power. Hearing the insult, Yudo grew even angrier. Yudo said he initially wanted to be gentler with Light, but because Light seemed so arrogant, Yudo became more determined to cut off his arms and legs. Yudo prepared to use a power he had never used before, the anti-white knight fighting arts, and immediately bombarded Light, screaming internally that this was his time to suffer an end. The attack caused an explosion across the entire area, and a bright light spread, obscuring visibility. Yudo hoped this would be the final blow, but Light was still able to withstand the attack with his own hands. Light calmly crushed Yudo's sword, then delivered a solid punch that sent Yudo flying far away. Light even mocked Yudo, asking, "Is that all a rank A can do? You want to blind your enemy and then launch a sudden attack? I can fight even without seeing my opponent." Yudo had truly chosen the wrong opponent this time. Light then asserted that any information Yudo possessed would be useless because it would all turn to dust. The situation escalated. Yudo pulled out his ultimate weapon, a phantasm-class treasure called the Eye of Valor, or the Eye of Instant Death. Yudo was sure this attack would be the end, even imagining using Light's remains to feed his pets. But the attack had absolutely no effect, and yep, Light was still perfectly fine. Afterward, Light used his SR appraisal skill to analyze the Eye of Valor, and yep, it turned out that the staff only reacted to enemies below level 3000. Since Light was level 9,999, it clearly wouldn't work. Yudo was in shock, never expecting to meet someone with such an insane level. Even a great name like Commander Hardy of the White Knights wouldn't reach that level. Meanwhile, Light casually calmed Momo again, who seemed slightly worried by the effect of the Eye of Valor just now. Yudo kept trying to use the Demon Eye repeatedly, but to no avail, until finally, the artifact shattered from being continuously forced. With no other way, Yudo fled, admitting his defeat. But Light did not give him a chance to escape so easily. With his anti-cooldown flicker skill, Light instantly reached Yudo and followed up with a hard punch, hitting Yudo squarely in the face. Light also told Yudo not to worry, as he wouldn't let him die just yet, because there was still information he wanted to extract from him. The scene closes with Light's absolute victory, and Momo jumping happily towards Light for defeating the person who had destroyed their family. Meanwhile, Numumu and Gold planned to escort the Dark Elves out of the dungeon to the surface, as teleportation was impossible inside. Nemumu initially rejected the plan, saying she was sent to guard Light no matter what. Nemumu even accused Gold of using this as an excuse to get alone time with her. With a serious tone, Gold stated he had no interest in flat-chested brats like Nemumu. Gold argued that he could technically take the 3 Dark Elves to the dungeon surface to be transported to Naraka later. However, he pointed out what Nemumu had done to Ayla. Her body was dying, full of poison. Gold added that he absolutely refused to touch a poisoned body because it might ruin his elegant golden robe. The trivial argument was finally ended by Light, who also instructed Mei and Eri to deactivate their invisibility skill. Light immediately ordered Mei to scan the interior of the dungeon, similar to what Nemumu had done earlier. Light then commanded Nemumu and Gold to take the dark elf trash to the lowest floor of Naraka for interrogation later. Before parting ways, Momo bid Gold farewell, and Gold replied, hoping they could play and fly together again next time. Next, Mei immediately used her scanning skill to map and observe the area around the dungeon. However, this time the scan was not as loud as Nemumu's. Momo even commented that it was faster and cooler than Nemumu's method. Mei and Eri continued to accompany Light as they descended deeper into the dungeon. They eventually arrived at the 4th floor. The place looked like an empty room, but there was another door inside. In front of that door stood a strange creature called the Fallen Sphinx, which immediately declared that it was time for them to drown in its power, claiming to be a god. When Light walked into the room, he was immediately drawn into an illusion of his hometown. His parents and siblings appeared before his eyes. His younger sister called out affectionately, and his parents greeted him warmly, even offering Light's favorite food. In addition, his older brother, Els, stood beside Light. All of this nearly caused Light to waver. If it weren't for his extremely high level, Light would have been trapped in the illusion. Light cried tears of sadness, feeling guilty for failing to save them in the past. Meanwhile, in the Fallen Sphinx's room, Momo was trying to wake up everyone who was caught in the Sphinx's genjutsu illusion. The Fallen Sphinx was confused as to why a small child was unaffected by the illusion. The Fallen Sphinx speculated that this might be a trick by the Soul Dragon, presenting a similar species as an anomaly. The Fallen Sphinx immediately raised its foot, preparing to crush everyone. Surprisingly, Momo bravely stepped forward, shielding the attack in a last-ditch effort to protect their friends. The scene returns to Light's genjutsu, where he was still chatting with his father. There, his father and mother advised him not to bear everything alone. Light could rely on his parents sometimes, as they would always support him. His mother then hugged Light warmly and said that a man didn't need to act tough all the time. It was okay to show his vulnerable and tired side when he couldn't handle it anymore. But in the midst of this feeling, Light realized it was all a trick. He expressed his thanks, saying his family was the best thing he ever had, and then activated the SSR Genjutsu Release skill card. Instantly, all the illusions shattered. The Fallen Sphinx immediately raged, but Light gave it no chance. The monster was easily defeated. Meanwhile, Eri and Mei were a little late to emerge from the illusion because they were too comfortable in their respective sweet dreams. They both apologized to Light. Light also thanked Momo for protecting the three of them while they were under the Fallen Sphinx's cheap genjutsu. Momo smiled, happy to be praised despite not having done anything. Light also pondered the genjutsu of his family just now. If his father and mother definitely could not be saved, at least Yume and Els still had a chance of being alive. Therefore, Light was determined to do whatever it took to save both of them, regardless of the obstacles, even if it meant fighting a goddess herself. Afterward, Eri grew suspicious. She noted that the enemies they had faced so far were strangely not very strong. This made Light even more curious, especially since one final door was waiting to be opened. As soon as the door opened, they encountered a large dragon, the Dragon of Souls. Sionne was also waiting there. Sionne warned them that the place was forbidden, but Light just stared intently and said, "It's been a long time." The sense of vengeance in his chest burned hotter. We briefly flash back to Sionne's own past. Her parents were once genius scientists, but their lives ended tragically. Sionne had to spend her childhood in loneliness. Young Sionne was essentially someone without any empathy. She even thought, "What a shame, my parents died too soon and couldn't see the results of their research." By the age of 13, Sionne had entered the Kingdom of Nine's Magic Academy, the best academy, and managed to graduate in just 1 year. Most people at 13 are still running after kites, right? Furthermore, At age 14, Sionne was heavily recruited by the kingdom's research institutions. Sionne herself registered at the laboratory where she could dedicate herself to her research. Sionne only wanted to continue her parents' dream, to conduct research that could make the Dark Elves the dominant race, defeating the High Elves and the Dragonals. But the school where she had studied never agreed. Sionne's research was deemed too dangerous because it required the sacrifice of human lives. The school's headmaster warned her that they could finance other research, but would not fund research that sacrificed lives. Sionne eventually left the school, abandoning everything. The Dark Elf government was initially reluctant to help, so Sionne worked as an adventurer to cover the costs, until finally, the Dark Elf Council learned of her ambition. The council orders Sionne to join a combined interracial hero party for a mission to search for the master. From there, Sionne saw a great opportunity, feeling she had nothing to lose but time. And that was the beginning of Sionne's meeting with Light, who was in the same party called the Gathering of Races. Now, 3 years later, Light met Sionne again and declared he would take revenge for what happened 3 years ago. Sionne initially didn't care much until Light's face made her nostalgic for their old party. Sionne commented that Light was surprisingly still alive and that the girls behind him must be his new party members. Sionne, having already obtained what she desired, access to the Dragon of Souls and all the power she could request, laughed triumphantly, no longer concerned with Light. Only one thought was in her head. Human sacrifice was a small price for scientific progress. The dragon chimed in, saying that it and Sionne were starting to merge. The reward? All the human souls it could consume. That was the promise Sionne had made in exchange. Light, hearing this, grew angrier, asking if Sionne truly felt nothing after sacrificing children, adults, everyone. But Sionne's answer remained cold. For her, sacrifice was part of the path to knowledge. On the side, Momo, realizing something was wrong, became terrified and started crying. Momo remembered what had happened to them and the others in this place. Eri, realizing this, said that Momo's body was a ghost body, and this must also be the result of a wound on Momo's soul that Light and the others would not be able to heal. Eri vehemently asked Sionne, "Is it true that you use human bodies for experiments?" Sionne casually replied that she didn't care if they were humans or elves, children or adults. If it was for the benefit of research, she would sacrifice them regardless. Eri was disgusted by Sionne's actions, feeling she deserved to be Light's target of revenge because she was beyond idiotic. Before meeting Light, Eri was a researcher. Her life was always focused on study, but after meeting Light, everything began to change. Mei, who was close to Eri, also never liked Sionne. Mei even openly said that Sionne made her sick. That marked the beginning of this major conflict, until they all plunged into battle against Sionne and the creature known as the Soul Dragon. Light vowed to absolutely annihilate the Soul Dragon and Sionne, who had gone utterly insane just for the sake of research. The tense atmosphere on the quiet, frozen snow plains was immediate as a massive, ice-scaled figure emerged from the white mist. The Soul Dragon, its body covered in cold crystals, stared intensely at Light and his group, a cohort of female mages often called the Pretty Ladies. The air around them felt heavy, as if a force field was actively repelling any ordinary human approach. Light's companions decided to retreat slightly, stating they would hold back and leave the matter entirely to Light. But from the front, the Soul Dragon, currently in the form of an elf, let out a thin laugh and countered with a sneer, saying that not only Light's soul would be taken, but also the souls of all the beautiful friends standing behind him. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed, a long cry full of rage and hatred, and a devastating wave of attack spread across the entire area. The ground trembled, the air vibrated, but Light remained completely unfazed. Light knew this was no ordinary attack. It was instant death, magic that directly pulled the soul from the target's body. Unfortunately, it was futile. Light and the entire team were already immune to such attacks. To them, it was just a meaningless, desperate roar. In a calm tone, Light explained that he could read the Soul Dragon's actions thanks to Ellie's ability. Therefore, if the Soul Dragon decided to stop, release Sionne, and return to its own world, Light would not continue the battle. But, of course, the Soul Dragon was not willing to concede so easily. Concurrent with its echoing scream, the Soul Dragon's body was surrounded by hundreds of sharp ice shards spinning around it. The Soul Dragon shouted angrily, accusing Light of arrogance just for being able to withstand its roar. Then, the dragon launched a direct attack on the soul, something that could cause suffering far worse than physical injury. But the result was the same. Light remained relaxed and unharmed. The Soul Dragon grew even more emotional, unleashing a hail of ice crystals that hammered the ground around Light, but all of them missed. The attack failed completely, and Light just stared coldly with a smirk. Annoyed, the Soul Dragon changed tactics. This time, it launched a curse magic, a deadly attack that could melt the bones of anyone it touched. But once again, Light easily dodged. His friends even laughed at the attack, saying such curse magic was too weak to penetrate their defenses. They joked that instead of trying to act tough with low-level magic, the Soul Dragon should practice more so its abilities weren't so embarrassing. The enraged Soul Dragon transformed into its true form, a colossal ice dragon that covered the sky. With a booming voice, the Soul Dragon accused Light of arrogance and promised to teach him the true meaning of despair. But Light only responded with a cynical smile. In Light's view, despair was nothing new. 3 years ago, thanks to Sionne and her peers, Light had experienced it deeper than anyone. Furious at being underestimated, the Soul Dragon launched a devastating ultimate attack, but still failed to hit its target. Growing increasingly frustrated, the Soul Dragon finally summoned its subordinates, a horde of terrifying monsters that emerged from behind the ice and fog. The atmosphere grew chaotic, but Light was not one to lose his calm. One of the mages, Momo-chan, complained that the arriving monsters looked disgusting. In her opinion, she deserved a more worthy opponent. On the other side, Sionne, appearing in a battle-maid uniform, stepped forward immediately, ready to protect Momo-chan and ensure no one touched the mage. Light faced the giant monster directly. The size difference was vast, but Light clenched his fist as if the challenge were merely a game. Light, with a mocking tone, said the Soul Dragon's attacks had absolutely no effect on him, and that the massive creature was just wasting time. A cynical smile appeared on Light's face. In his opinion, everything the Soul Dragon did was nothing more than the desperate effort of an arrogant, overconfident creature. Even with the help of its subordinates, the result would not change. Because for Light, this battle was over from the start. Only the Soul Dragon hadn't realized it yet. The great battle between the Soul Dragon and Light continued, but one thing was clear: who stood supreme, and who was merely struggling in vain. The great battle took place amidst the ruins of what might once have been an altar. The air around them was heavy, filled with pressure from abnormal magical energy. The Soul Dragon, currently in its terrifying, elf-like form, stood atop a large stone, looking down at Light and his friends, who had just defeated its monster army. However, strangely, the Soul Dragon laughed loudly, seemingly indifferent to its forces falling one by one. Light stared at it in surprise, trying to understand why the creature could laugh in this situation. But the Soul Dragon replied in a chilling tone, admitting that it only wanted to show them the true meaning of despair. After that, everything became more gripping. The Soul Dragon raised its hand, and around them, the bodies of the monsters that had been destroyed began to rise again. Their flesh and bones were formed from a faint light, like fog condensed by dark magic. The Soul Dragon explained that its subordinates' bodies were merely temporary vessels. Their essence was not flesh or blood, but souls. As long as the Soul Dragon possessed magical power, those bodies would continue to live, regenerate, and would never truly die. With a look of satisfaction, the Soul Dragon emphasized that the monsters were immortal as long as the source of its magical power was not extinguished. The explanation briefly silenced Light and his friends. It felt like fighting an enemy with no end. The soul dragon continued to laugh at them, saying that even fools could now understand the meaning of despair. But Light looked disgusted. Something inside him rejected that cruel logic, and at the same time, one of the subordinate monsters suddenly made a strange sound. A soft, hoarse voice came from the heavily damaged body, begging to be killed. From the sound, Light realized that the monster was not an ordinary artificial creature, but a collection of trapped souls manipulated by the soul dragon. The soul dragon looked even happier. With a twisted expression, it said that hearing the screams of pain from the souls that once fought against it was a special pleasure. It claimed the satisfaction was the same as killing livestock, just to enjoy their final sounds. The soul dragon even mentioned how enjoyable it was to hear Light's screams 3 years ago, proof that this was not their first encounter. But the climax occurred when Light saw 2 familiar figures among the imprisoned souls. They were Momo-chan's father and mother. They looked tormented, their bodies semi-transparent, as if they had lost their physical form. With hoarse voices, they tried to beg for their child to be saved, forcing themselves to stay conscious to protect the child they loved. The soul dragon, noticing this, laughed at its own negligence. It confessed that the soul of the small child, Momo-chan, was actually its own creation. In the past, Momo-chan's parents' souls willingly sacrificed themselves so their child could escape, but their efforts were ultimately futile. Sionne, the soul dragon's loyal servant, then suggested that the victims be given a little hope before being completely destroyed. In her opinion, the greater a person's hope, the deeper the pain when that hope is snatched away. Hearing this, Momo-chan's parents' souls could only cry, pleading for their child to be set free. But the soul dragon did not care. Amidst the chaos, Momo-chan appeared, but no longer as a little girl. Her body had been taken over by the soul dragon's magic. Her movements were stiff, her eyes empty, and her body began to be shrouded in a dark aura that forced her to attack Light and his friends. Light tried to stop her, but Momo-chan's body continued to move against her own will. Meanwhile, the soul dragon, now beginning to reveal its massive dragon form made of ice and aura, roared loudly, anticipating Light's screams of pain. Under pressure, Light tried to fend off the uncontrollable attacks from Momo-chan. The child's crying mixed with the monstrous roars coming from her body. Each time an attack came, Light could only retreat, trying to find a way not to harm Momo-chan. But everything became more complicated when Sionne revealed something even crueler. Sionne said that Momo-chan's body was now composed not just of one soul, but dozens of other children's souls fused together by the soul dragon. That was why Momo-chan's current form was like a massive monster. Cries of pain continued to be heard from inside the monster's body. Several voices were begging to be released, asking for freedom from the suffering that bound them. But the soul dragon laughed with satisfaction, enjoying every scream as if listening to soothing music. An exhausted Light finally turned to Ellie, the mage accompanying him. With a bruised face, Light asked if there was still any way to save those souls without having to kill Momo-chan. But Ellie could only answer in a heavy tone. The only way was to defeat the soul dragon, because the creature itself was a collection of the souls it controlled. As long as it lived, all those souls would remain trapped within its power. After hearing that, Light's eyes sharpened, filled with anger and determination. Without hesitation, Light swore that this time, the soul dragon and Sionne would not escape. Even the usually arrogant soul dragon looked slightly shocked by the sudden, drastic increase in Light's aura. The battle reignited. Magical explosions filled the air. Light, fire, and ice collided, creating a storm of energy around them. Light and his friends fought desperately against the soul dragon and its endlessly resurrecting army. Until finally, in one last moment, Light activated his ultimate ability, the SSR Holy Wreath skill. A great light enveloped the entire area, like a flower blooming in the darkness, marking the beginning of the end for the agonizing fight. The battle between Light and the soul dragon finally reached its most insane point. After all the previous suffering and events, Light finally played his ultimate card, the SSR Holy Wreath card. As soon as the card was activated, a gentle yet powerful light instantly appeared, enveloping the entire area. Its holy aura permeated the air, causing the Soul Dragon's subordinate monsters, which had been spreading darkness, to suddenly writhe in pain. The light was not just attacking, but cleansing, like sunlight burning away a black fog. Light immediately understood that this was no ordinary card. In his mind, he realized this card had the ability to purify evil creatures. And indeed, the effect was clear. The monsters hit by the purification ray began to change form, transforming from monstrous figures into peaceful-looking spirits. They looked at Light with serene expressions, and before disappearing, the spirits seemed to express gratitude, calling Light a small god who had freed them. Seeing this, Light and his friends felt a moment of relief. At least one monster had been saved from the Soul Dragon's shackles, but the moment didn't last long. The Soul Dragon, which had seemed calm, was now shocked, its face contorted with rage. Light could only watch as the purified spirits slowly faded into the sky, leaving a brief tranquility in the chaotic battlefield. Light thought again, comparing the effect with other purification cards, and realized this card was specifically designed for undead, ghosts, and zombies, creatures trapped between life and death. However, the Soul Dragon, still in its elf form, immediately realized what had happened. In a condescending tone, the creature said that Light had understood the futility of destroying the monsters' bodies, so Light chose the correct path, purifying their souls. But, according to the Soul Dragon, all those efforts were in vain. To him, Light was merely a naive, small creature. After uttering its final insult, the Soul Dragon reverted to its massive monster form and immediately attacked Light with a full, furious onslaught. Emitting dark energy from its body, the Soul Dragon yelled that it could summon new souls, different from the ones Light had just purified. It claimed it didn't matter how many times Light tried to cleanse them, it was all pointless. Because the Soul Dragon was not just a creature with great magical power, it was an entity formed from 100 million souls. Boastfully, the Soul Dragon called itself a chosen god, a ruler of souls as numerous as the stars in the sky, the result of years of relentless accumulation. With a mocking laugh, the Soul Dragon said that Light was alone. It was impossible to purify 100 million souls by himself. According to the dragon, Light's entire struggle had been futile from the beginning, and all his efforts led in only one direction: despair. The Soul Dragon laughed loudly, calling Light a despicable and weak creature, while continuing to provoke him. Even its subordinates joined in the shouting, demanding that Light and his friends show their faces of despair. The atmosphere grew tenser, but Light slowly smirked. His gaze was sharp, penetrating the Soul Dragon's elf form. In a calm tone, Light said that he already knew everything. Ellie, the mage, always by his side, had previously explained the ecology and power of the Soul Dragon. Therefore, Light came fully prepared. Light also admitted that he knew the Soul Dragon housed many souls within it, and the most disgusting part was the reality that all those souls felt endless suffering. Sionne, standing behind Light, chimed in. The servant said she agreed with Light that the Soul Dragon was indeed the most disgusting creature they had ever faced. Ellie also spoke, with a regretful tone. She said this was not Light's fault. Knowledge about the Soul Dragon was limited, and she apologized for not being able to predict its true nature earlier. According to Ellie, a creature like the Soul Dragon was merely the purest form of darkness, a vile being, unworthy of being called a god. Hearing that, Light took a deep breath. His face turned serious, his aura slowly rising. He said it was enough. All this had to end. He did not want to continue dealing with such corruption anymore. With a quick motion, Light raised his ultra-rare card holder, a high-class card container. As soon as Light uttered the keyword to open it, hundreds of thousands of cards instantly flew out of the holder, floating and spreading across the sky. Their colors varied, but all emitted a holy aura, as powerful as the holy wreath. The soul dragon immediately panicked. Its elf form screamed in surprise, unable to believe what it was seeing. The creature said it was impossible for a human to possess so many powerful purification cards. It was even claimed that all those cards were magic items that should be impossible to collect in such numbers. Light looked at the soul dragon without hesitation, then calmly explained that he had collected all those purification cards for 3 full years. Every day, Light utilized his gift, unlimited gacha, to obtain card after card. And now, all the results of that hard work were stored in one place, the card holder he had now opened in front of the creature. The number was astounding: 99,999,999 purification cards, almost equal to the number of souls forming the soul dragon's body itself. The soul dragon shrieked, refusing to accept the reality it saw. In its dragon form, made of ice and dark aura, the creature screamed hysterically. According to it, it was impossible for a human, a single being, to possess such immense power. But Light calmly replied, saying it was true that he was only one person. However, with his gift, which could turn the impossible into reality, something impossible like this could indeed happen. In the spotlight of millions of cards spinning in the air, Light straightened his body. His gaze was sharp, full of determination. His voice was firm and trembling with spirit, as he announced the true power that had been hidden all this time. Loudly, Light declared, "This is the power of unlimited gacha." As those words left his mouth, all the cards in the sky instantly shone brightly. An explosion of holy light flooded the entire area, piercing the body of the soul dragon and all its forces. Screams, roars, and the whispers of souls sounded in a chorus before everything vanished in the cleansing light. The battle finally reached the point where despair was answered with hope, and the soul dragon, the creature that called itself a god, slowly began to fade, defeated by the resilience of a human named Light. The battle reached its peak as the sky over the ruins was filled with flashes from the millions of purification cards released from Light's ultra-rare card holder. Light shouted, unleashing all the scattered cards and directing the massive attack at the Soul Dragon's Ice Dragon form. The Soul Dragon's reaction was immediate and brutal. The dragon writhed in pain, while the elf form clinging to the dragon also panicked, screaming about the souls being attacked by the purification. One by one, the souls composing the soul dragon's body began to break free and undergo the purification process, causing the soul dragon to wince as if being shredded from within. The purification process was more than just a visual effect. The holy energy from Light's cards bound and liberated the soul essences, releasing them as an act of free will. The souls finally felt a long-lost tranquility. Several souls that were visibly purified offered hopeful words of thanks, grateful to Light for saving them from suffering. The moment brought brief relief to Light and his force, while the Soul Dragon felt the entire foundation of its existence eroding. The Soul Dragon fought back fiercely, mobilizing the remnants of its dark power to counterattack and try to stop the purification process, but every effort felt increasingly futile. The Soul Dragon's form slowly shrank due to the loss of the souls that composed its body, and the creature panicked when it realized that its once reliable regeneration was no longer effective. Light continued to warn that this attack could no longer be stopped. Even Light himself was unable to reverse the purification flow that had been released. The residual magic released during the process drew Ellie's attention. Ellie scientifically observed the phenomenon. When souls were purified, the magical energy that had been holding and composing them was released, meaning they were witnessing not only the loss of souls, but also the visualization of energy, a strange phenomenon consistent with the Soul Dragon's ecological theory that Ellie had previously explained. Light responded with relief, accepting the words of gratitude from the now free souls, while the commotion of purification filled the air. The Soul Dragon, now a shrunken and battered remnant, attempted to flee while asserting that the Soul Dragon's existence was not yet over. Light pursued relentlessly, refusing to give the Soul Dragon any space to disappear from the battlefield. The light of purification continued to surround Light, and the released souls constantly repeated their thanks, the voices forming a backdrop that strengthened Light's resolve. When the light intensity reached its peak, Light released a final attack in the form of a purification light explosion named Light of Despair, a move that gathered all the holy energy into one final blast. The explosion completed the purification of the remaining souls still bound to the Soul Dragon, forcing the remaining form of the Soul Dragon to its knees by the power. Although the lingering arrogance of the Soul Dragon's remnants could still be heard laughing, Light's tenacity had silenced much of what was once considered impossible. The Soul Dragon briefly taunted that Light's immense number of purification cards were still not enough, judging that Light had run out of options. Light responded with calm determination. All the purification cards had indeed been used, but Light was not finished. Light opened the seal of the first soul, code 9999, and activated Shinso Gungnir, an ultimate purple magic more devastating than anything seen so far. With the Shinso Gungnir attack, Light launched the final wave of energy, prepared to annihilate the remnants of the Soul Dragon from this world. In the purple light of that power, the story of this battle headed towards a decisive conclusion. The liberation of souls, and the end of the tyranny of despair that the Soul Dragon had cultivated. The moment Light activated the Shinso Gungnir magic, the ground around him immediately trembled violently. From the cracks beneath his feet, a burst of dark aura emerged, enveloping the entire area. The energy felt different, heavy, dense, and seemingly alive. The air around them turned cold and oppressive, as if a massive entity were watching from beyond the darkness. The Soul Dragon, still trapped between its elf and ice dragon forms, appeared to tremble with fear. Its gaze was fixed on Light, and its expression completely changed. For the first time, the creature looked truly terrified. In its mind, the power emanating from Light could not possibly belong to an ordinary human. The fear turned into panic, making it want to flee, but its body was already beginning to shrink from the effects of the previous purification. Light merely smiled faintly at the drastic change. In his mind, he finally understood something. The shrinking body of the Soul Dragon was revealing its true form, its soul core, the source of all its power and hatred. Light immediately stepped forward without hesitation, preparing the Gungnir in his hand, which was now enveloped in a dense purple light. The Soul Dragon immediately panicked, screaming for Light to back away, calling Light a monster for being unable to withstand the pressure of the power pouring out of the human's body. But Light had no intention of stopping. In one swift motion, Light hurled the Shinso Gungnir attack directly at the Soul Dragon's now exposed soul core. A loud explosion echoed, coinciding with the Soul Dragon's scream of pain. The purple light consumed the dragon's entire body, which began to crack from within, as if burning from its own soul. Light, his face full of rage, swore that this attack would destroy the Soul Dragon's soul core to its very roots, so that the creature could never be reborn. As the light intensified, the Soul Dragon pleaded for mercy, screaming in fear, promising to leave this world and never cause trouble again. However, Light continued his attack without relenting. The cornered Soul Dragon tried every method to survive. In its panic, the creature even betrayed its own ally, Sionne. The Soul Dragon shouted that it was willing to become Light's subordinate, if pardoned, even promising to kill Sionne with its own hands as proof of loyalty. But for Light, the plea was meaningless. Hearing such a vile creature dare to speak Shionne's name and attempt to steal his target of revenge made Light even more disgusted. With a cold look and a tone of weariness, Light ended it all, saying that he had seen enough of the Soul Dragon's disgusting behavior. In one final shout, Light destroyed the Soul Dragon completely. The light of purification exploded from within the creature's body, creating a sight like a miniature sun exploding in the empty space. When the light subsided, the Soul Dragon's form had completely vanished, leaving nothing but slowly drifting magical dust. Yet, in the midst of the lingering energy, something unexpected appeared. From the remnants of the purification magic, a new soul formed in the shape of a baby. Light looked at the small figure with a mixed gaze of relief and sadness. Around him, soft shadows of other now liberated souls emerged. Their silhouettes resembled humans, smiling warmly at Light, as if thanking him for the freedom just granted. As Light looked around, one of the shadows became clear. The figure of Momo-chan, Light's younger sibling. In a memory that surfaced in his head, a small hand of Momo reached for Light's hand in the past, accompanied by an innocent smile full of happiness. The flash brought Light back to his childhood memories, when Momo cried in the arms of their father and mother. In that memory, Momo apologized tearfully, regretting being captured and forcing her parents to sacrifice themselves. Momo's father, weeping, hugged his daughter tightly, saying that Momo was not at fault at all. Rather, the father should apologize for not being able to protect her. Momo's mother gently interjected, apologizing for not being able to shield Momo from all the pain she experienced. Momo, now reunited with her parents, finally smiled, saying that she was all right and didn't want to play hide and seek alone anymore. Momo only wanted to play with her father and mother. Among them, many other children's souls were also seen smiling peacefully. All thanked Light with happy faces. They said that from now on, they didn't have to hide anymore, didn't have to go anywhere else, because everything was peaceful. They credited Momo for bringing her brother to this place. The souls were grateful that they could finally rest in peace. Momo then turned to Light and said goodbye with a cheerful face. Light looked at his sibling one last time before their soul slowly disappeared into the light. The room was now filled only with a soft white glow, and Light stood in the center, surrounded by a tranquility he had never felt before. However, behind that peace, a contemplation arose in Light's mind. His thoughts returned to the past, to all the tragedies that had befallen him. In his heart, Light wondered, if only the unlimited gacha power had been there from the start. Perhaps his father and mother wouldn't have been killed. Perhaps Nichan and Yume wouldn't have been captured. He even thought for a moment, if I die now, could I meet them again? The scene changed. Light now stood in the middle of a silent cemetery. He kept staring at the gravestone before him, imagining that if he had never left the village and chosen to live peacefully there, perhaps all the residents would still be alive. But then Light realized, all that regret wouldn't change anything. He asserted to himself to no longer be trapped in the past. With a serious face, Light stood tall in the still glowing light, as if viewing all those memories one by one, no longer with sadness, but with a determination to keep moving forward. Light stood in a strange darkness, and before him appeared two figures he knew intimately, his father and mother. Light's body immediately trembled, not out of fear, but because he knew what he was seeing was impossible. In his heart, Light tried to calm himself. He knew that the figures in front of him were just an illusion, because his father and mother had died 3 years ago. But even so, seeing their faces again still made his heart pound heavily. The figures of Light's father and mother suddenly approached and hugged him. The embrace was incredibly warm, so real that Light briefly wondered if it was truly an illusion. In that embrace, Light could feel the gentle vibrations of their bodies, the distinct smell of home he used to smell as a child, and a sense of peace that had been lost for a long time. At that very moment, his father and mother conveyed something about how their death was not Light's fault, and that they had always been watching and staying with him. Light, unable to hold back his emotions, finally wept uncontrollably. He hugged them even tighter while remembering his past, a time when he only wanted everyone in his village to be happy. Light left the poor village with the goal of becoming a great adventurer, so he could make his father and mother proud, but everything ended in shambles. The village he left behind was destroyed due to his own mistake. All the happiness he dreamed of turned into deep regret. His mother gently stroked Light's hair. The touch was so familiar, it almost made Light forget to breathe. Light's mother then told the story of the day Light was born, a difficult, snowy night, and the sun rising just as Light was born. His mother hugged the small baby while praying that her child could live in a world full of light. Light's father smiled, remembering the moment his son's tiny finger grasped his. They were both so happy and grateful that Light was born into this world. His father even said that there was always light within light, and every human birth surely brought a blessing to the world. He emphasized one thing, that Light must live happily, not for anyone else, but also for the sake of those who had passed away. Those words made Light cry even more. He hugged his mother again, tightly, as if never wanting to let go. And at that moment, Light's mother comforted Light, saying that they were all fine as long as Light remained safe and happy, because Light was the son they loved most. But suddenly, the warmth Light had just felt began to fade. The touch of his parents' hands vanished, slowly but surely. Light panicked. He tried to call them, screaming with all his might, but no sound came out at all. His body trembled, and he tried to chase after them as they began to disappear into the air. However, the further Light ran, the further the figures went. All that remained was a soft, echoing voice, the final message from his parents. They told Light to stay happy and remember that their love would always be with him. Light felt his knees on the ground, staring blankly at the spot where his parents had stood. His cries broke out again. He felt destroyed for being unable to do anything for them. He felt foolish for having just experienced that happiness, only to lose it again. Amidst the tears, Light thanked them in his heart for being born, raised, and loved sincerely. He couldn't express it perfectly, but the affection truly reached his soul. Then Light made a decision. With trembling hands, he cut his own hair. The act was not just symbolic, but a form of new resolve. Light affirmed to himself that from now on, he would also continue to cherish his father and mother, even though they were gone. And somehow, his parents' figures reappeared, but this time in the form of a warm light. They smiled gently, as if understanding Light's inner thoughts, and then said that Light had finally said it correctly. When Light opened his eyes, his vision was blurred. He realized he was no longer in the illusion world. His surroundings looked hazy, but he heard his friends calling. Mei looked anxious, informing him that Light had briefly collapsed after unleashing the Gungnir power. Light was confused, trying to remember what had just happened. He began to realize that perhaps it was all just an illusion arising from his deepest desires, but it felt too real to be called a dream. Light tried to stand up, but his body ached terribly. He asked Ellie to perform purification on him. The injuries sustained from Gungnir were far worse than before, and each time the power was used, the damaging effect grew greater. Ellie performed the purification using cloth made by Mei, while Light endured the pain, ordering them to assist in sealing the Gungnir power. On the other side, Sionne was already standing, facing a massive creature, the Soul Dragon, which had returned in its elf and monster form. Her gaze was sharp and serious, indicating that the final battle was about to begin. The tense atmosphere was filled with powerful energy that vibrated in the air, and Sionne merely stated firmly that the time had come to end everything. Light and Sionne stood over the remnants of the Soul Dragon, which had been defeated with ease. The dragon's body was shattered, leaving behind only large pieces of scattered scales and bones. The air around them was still hot from the remnants of the extraordinary fight energy. Sionne, currently in her servant form, stared at the dragon's ruins with a mix of shock and awe. In her mind, it was impossible for a creature that powerful to be defeated so quickly. Sionne thought internally that the Soul Dragon was an immortal being that couldn't possibly be killed. But Light had just proven the opposite. Sionne then transformed into her true elf form and looked at Light with a sense of wonder. She began to ask with a curious tone. Sionne recalled the past when Light's unlimited gacha power could only produce useless, weak cards. She wondered how Light could now summon cards with such immense power. Sionne even guessed that perhaps there was a certain condition factor that enabled the card's activation, and she wanted to know what other cards Light might possess. Sionne insinuated that one of those cards might be useful for the research she was conducting on the soul. Light, now much more mature than before, looked at Sionne with a sharp gaze full of anger. His voice was cold and heavy when he firmly rejected Sionne's talk. Light remembered everything that had happened, how Sionne had used many humans as test subjects without remorse, and had even betrayed him and tried to kill him in the abyss. All those memories made Light's blood boil. In a firm tone, Light declared that he came to this place not to discuss or cooperate, but to seek revenge. Sionne only chuckled at the accusation. According to Sionne, everything she did was for the sake of scientific advancement. Sionne tried to explain that if a person's gift could be released and transferred to another race, then humans could gain new value as a source of power and might escape interracial discrimination. Sionne argued that this research would actually open up a new future for the world. And because of that, according to Sionne, the sacrifice of a few humans was acceptable. She brought up Light's past motivation for joining the gathering of races to eliminate discrimination, and Sionne considered her actions to be in line with that goal. Light fell silent for a moment, staring blankly at the dead dragon's remains. He remembered the past, when he truly believed in the idea of a world without discrimination. Light had joined the gathering of races because he wanted to fight for that cause. His time there had been difficult, but for Light, those days still felt enjoyable. He had once considered everything to be pure and full of hope, but now that he knew it was all Sionne's trickery, all that remained was pain and disappointment. In his heart, Light admitted that those times were still valuable, but Sionne's betrayal had destroyed everything. Light suddenly exploded with rage. With eyes red from emotion, Light shouted angrily, stating that Sionne would never be forgiven. Light emphasized that among the many souls taken by the Soul Dragon, there were so many victims of Sionne's cruel experiments. All those people lost their future because of Sionne's greed. Light could even feel the pain and sorrow they left behind in this world. For Light, all of Sionne's research was nothing more than senseless cruelty. Sionne retorted with anger too. Sionne laughed at Light, calling his words funny ramblings from someone who didn't know what it felt like to be betrayed or desperate. Sionne felt that Light's actions were just a form of empty vengeance that would yield no result. But Light continued to stare coldly at Sionne and said that Sionne's research was useless trash. Light firmly stated that Sionne was unfit to live and must die by his own hands. Those words genuinely provoked Sionne. The elf's face turned furious, and her eyes reddened. Sionne insulted Light back, calling him a low creature, an arrogant, experimental animal. Sionne believed Light was unfit to talk about research, because Light knew nothing about the meaning of progress. Sionne shouted that her research was extraordinary and could bring huge results in a short time, while Light responded calmly but cynically, saying that the research was just a cruel game, no different from torture. Light called Sionne's methods those of an impatient child who didn't understand proper methodology. For Light, Sionne was merely deceiving herself with the excuse of research, when all she was doing was tormenting others. But Sionne remained stubborn. Sionne retorted loudly that the advancement of the world was true justice. According to Sionne, even those who died should be happy to be sacrificed for research. Her words made Light even more disgusted. Light stared at Sionne with complete revulsion, then said that Sionne's research was meaningless cruelty, and if the dead were called happy for being tortured, then Sionne had lost her sanity. Light, who was now wearing an elf mask, raised his hand. In a flat voice, Light activated his new card. He named the card SSSR, Gate of Hell. Instantly, the air around them changed drastically, the temperature dropped, and the foul stench of death was noticeable. Behind Sionne, a giant gate made of bones formed, adorned with grinning skulls. From inside the gate came horrifying sounds, as if calling lost souls. Sionne immediately backed away with a pale face. She screamed in terror, knowing the meaning of that gate. Whoever passed through the gate of hell must abandon all hope. But before she could escape, dozens of disgusting monsters with many heads and gaping mouths emerged from within the gate. The monsters immediately swarmed Sionne, tearing at her body without mercy. Sionne's screams filled the air, full of pain and fear. Light just stood there, staring with a flat expression, but his eyes were teary. In his heart, hatred was mixed with sadness. Light explained the card's effect. The wounds Sionne received would heal instantly, but the pain would be felt endlessly. The level of Sionne's suffering was determined by the magnitude of the sins and darkness she had created. The greater her sin, the more monsters would appear to torment her. The tormented Sionne began to scream for mercy, calling Light's name repeatedly. But Light looked at her without pity. In his mind, this was the result of Sionne's own research, a hell created from the sins and suffering of others. Sionne continued to scream until the elf's body was finally destroyed, torn, and eaten by the monsters from hell. When it was all over, all that remained was dust and a small card in Light's hand. The card contained Sionne's soul core, enveloped by a pulsing black aura. Light stared at the card with a cold face, murmuring softly that the effect of this card would make Sionne suffer for a full, continuous day. Light then gripped a small cube, staring at it intently. In a cold tone, Light said that after Sionne emerged from the gate of hell, she would be sent to the bottom of the abyss, along with Garu and Sasha, his two other targets of revenge. Light added that this time, he would ensure Sionne felt endless, eternal pain. After everything was finished, Light looked up at the dark sky above him and muttered to himself, "There are still 5 more people I must eliminate." His journey of revenge was far from over. Light and Mei stood in front of the gate to the other world, which was still emitting a residue of blue light after the major battle. The air around them felt heavy, filled with lingering magical energy. Mei bowed, reporting in a calm voice that the sealing of Shinso Gungnir was complete, and Ellie would fully close the gate next. Light simply nodded, entrusting the final step to Ellie, who promptly and enthusiastically replied that the task could be left to her. A few days after the incident, Light returned to the abyss, bringing the secured and now fully sealed Sionne. Sionne was placed on the lower floor of the abyss, the area where all creatures who had committed grave sins were imprisoned. For Light, it wasn't just a prison, but a place that would make Sionne feel the pain equivalent to all the sins she had committed in her life. Light tasked Ellie with restoring the area that had been distorted by the effects of the Great Battle, ensuring everything returned to normal within a few days. Furthermore, Ellie was given the responsibility to ensure her role as Dark Zamaa was recorded as a significant achievement by placing Sionne alongside Garu and Rasia after she emerged from the Gate of Hell. Light then made a report on the dungeon's condition. According to him, although it was hard to believe the destruction could be fixed so quickly, reports showed the damaged space was slowly returning to normal, which was clearly advantageous for their side. Sionne was presumed dead due to a delayed rescue, and the 2 victim corpses were believed to have been eaten by monsters. In reality, they were all safely secured on the lower floor of the abyss. Yudo and his Sword of the Island group were also confirmed dead inside the dungeon. By reading their memories, Light learned how Yudo and his group kidnapped and murdered humans without remorse. After seeing all this, Light concluded that the execution they received was a fitting atonement for their sins. Ellie then brought new information obtained from the dungeon laboratory. She mentioned the mysterious figure named Master that Yudo had previously spoken about. She said this: Master had recently appeared in the Human Kingdom territory, though many considered it only a rumor. But from the information Ellie managed to gather, there was indeed someone in that kingdom who possessed extraordinary power, even for a human. Light began to think deeply, trying to connect all the events. He wondered if this master figure was the cause of his hometown's destruction. If the rumor was true, then that person was indeed a human. But the question remained, why would someone cruelly destroy their own kind? All these uncertainties frustrated Light because the information they had was still very limited. Light felt he couldn't provide a certain answer and apologized for his inability. But Ellie quickly reassured Light. Light then replied softly, saying it was not Ellie's fault at all. He realized that they were indeed still lacking information about the master figure. However, further investigation revealed that Yudo and his group were also involved in an interstate espionage network. They used their position as adventurers to send secret information from one country to another, like an underground intermediary. From there, Light could draw a broader conclusion. A person named Gigas, a representative of the Dark Elf archipelago nation in the eastern region, was found to have received information directly from Yudo. So Yudo was actually working as a spy in other countries and reported about the Tower Wizard to the Dark Elf upper class. Since the Queen of the Elf Kingdom was also aware of this, it was not strange that the Dark Elf side had similar information. Light suspected that Gigas had important data about the Master, and he intended to show Ellie how to extract that information from him. After listening to the full report, Light sincerely praised Ellie. He was impressed that Ellie was always reliable in any situation. Light even offered a reward as a form of appreciation. But Ellie immediately refused with a flushed face, saying that being useful to Light was already the greatest happiness for her. On the other side, Sionne, still in a sealed condition, began to show signs of remorse. Sionne pleaded to be given one more chance to swear loyalty to Light. In a somewhat excessive display of sincerity, Sionne nearly begged permission to kiss Light's feet as a form of atonement. But before the atmosphere could get any stranger, Mei arrived with a panicked face, running while carrying important news. Ellie, who was reporting, was immediately annoyed because Mei suddenly came and interrupted the conversation. The two briefly exchanged sarcastic remarks, creating a somewhat funny tension between them. Light tried to calm both of them while asking Mei the reason for her hurried arrival. Mei quickly announced the big news. Light's younger sister, Yume, had been found. That sentence immediately shocked Light, Ellie, and even the sealed Sionne. Light instantly asked Mei to explain in more detail. According to Mei's report, Yume was currently in the human kingdom and working as a maid there. Light was surprised to hear this, as he never imagined his sister would be in such a place. Ellie, upon hearing the news, became furious, feeling offended that someone like Yume could be treated as a mere servant. Ellie swore that the humans responsible must face the consequences. Light quickly calmed Ellie and asked Mei to continue the explanation. Mei then narrated the full chronology. Yume was found unconscious by First Princess Lilith of the Human Kingdom while the princess was touring the capital. The princess helped Yume by giving her a recovery potion and even took her in for care. Lilith was known for her kindness, generosity, and was nicknamed the Saint of Humanity for her strong sense of justice. Afterward, Lilith hired Yume as an apprentice maid as a form of repayment, citing the use of the expensive recovery potion. Mei also expressed suspicion whether Lilith's actions were truly pure and without any other motive. Light then calmly analyzed the report. From the described characteristics, the Yume who was found was very similar to his sister. Light wondered how Yume could have survived the destruction of their village earlier. The distance between his village and the capital of the human kingdom was very far, requiring months of travel by horse-drawn carriage. Light also questioned the whereabouts of his older brother. As there was no information about him, only Yume was mentioned. After a moment of contemplation, Light guessed that perhaps his older brother had managed to take Yume out of the village, and they got separated during the journey. All of this was still a mystery, but the most important thing for him now was to be able to reunite with Yume. From there, Light was sure he could understand many things that had been unanswered. An excited Ellie immediately offered to go and retrieve Yume, but Light gently refused, knowing that Ellie still had many responsibilities at the Giant Tower and the Elf Kingdom. Moreover, if Ellie handled all the work alone, it could cause big problems. Light finally entrusted the task to Mei, who was quite agile and could move freely without attracting attention. However, Ellie did not stay quiet. With a serious expression, Ellie swore that as the Tower Wizard and Light's maid, she would ensure Yume's safe return. But Ellie also stressed that forcibly storming the human castle was not an option. Lilith had hired Yume, but her goal was more about protection. So the only problem now was how to bring Yume home in the right way. Finally, Light and Ellie devised a careful plan. Light suggested that the Elf Queen invite Princess Lilith to visit the Giant Tower for diplomatic reasons. That way, Yume could accompany the princess, and they could meet without causing suspicion. Ellie agreed to the idea with full confidence and immediately left to carry out the order. After Ellie left, Light was silent for a moment. He felt both relieved and anxious. In his heart, Light hoped that the person found was truly Yume, but if it turned out not to be, Light was prepared to accept that reality. He was also determined to continue searching for his older brother, whose whereabouts were still unknown. In his heart of hearts, Light felt like the empty, missing part since the day his village was destroyed was finally beginning to fill again. Light then looked at his own hands, remembering the struggle of the last 3 years since the day his life was completely shattered. Since being thrown to the deepest floor of the abyss, Light had continuously fought, building strength and preparing for the day of retribution. Together with Mei, Light built new power and formed his own nation. Everything he did had one goal: to save Yume and his older brother, and to bring an end to all the suffering that had occurred. No matter how strong the enemies awaiting him, Light was determined to keep moving forward without retreating. Light awoke from an incredibly comfortable sleep. It felt so soft and warm that Light wanted to stay that way forever. But upon regaining consciousness, Light started to feel strange, because the pillow he was using smelled so fragrant and the futon bedding was far too comfortable for a place like the abyss. Light was immediately shocked when he realized that what he was using as a pillow was not a pillow, but someone who was embracing him. In a panic, Light hurriedly got up and saw a woman with a maid's appearance, smiling calmly. The woman gently greeted Light while reminding him not to move carelessly right after waking up. From this, Light finally knew that the woman was Mei, his personal maid who had saved him in the abyss after everyone in the Gathering Races party tried to kill him. At that moment, Light contemplated his past. All the bitter events resurfaced in his head. Light remembered how much it hurt to be betrayed by people he once considered friends. Back then, they seemed kind, often laughed together, and even helped each other. But it all turned out to be a facade meant to deceive. As the memory came back, Light began to tremble and screamed while clutching his head. His anger and heartbreak mixed together. Seeing his state, Mei immediately hugged Light gently from behind. The touch calmed Light slightly. Mei knew exactly how deep the wounds left by the betrayal were. Mei said that Light no longer needed to be afraid because she was now by his side. Even if the enemy were a goddess, Mei would stand by Light without hesitation. The embrace slowly made Light stop trembling, and his tears began to fall unconsciously. After a while, Light thanked Mei and said he felt a little better. Once the atmosphere calmed down, the two talked about food. Mei said that the strange taste of Light's previously made food was no problem at all. In fact, she was happy that Light paid attention to such small things. But Mei had an idea. Perhaps food ingredients and spices could be obtained through Light's unlimited gacha gift. Mei even suggested that if they were truly desperate, monsters could be used as food ingredients, though she herself couldn't bear the thought of Light eating such hideous creatures. Mei joked that the worst they would get from the gacha would be moldy bread that fell on the ground, but she promised to keep pulling the gacha until they got decent food. Not long after, Mei started cooking with gacha-obtained ingredients, and the result shocked Light. The white bread Mei made tasted incredibly delicious, far exceeding expectations. Light even said it was the first time he had eaten bread that was so white and delicious. Mei just smiled in relief, saying she was happy Light liked her cooking. In his heart, Light was amazed. Mei was not only strong and intelligent, but also a great cook. After eating, Mei said they needed to start raising Light's level so he wouldn't die foolishly in a dangerous place like the abyss. Mei estimated that Light needed to reach at least level 1000 to be considered safe. Light was initially very surprised, but eventually agreed to the training. Mei then explained her magic thread. She said the thread was made of magical energy and could be shaped as she wished. From that thread, Mei could create anything, from nets and beds to the white cocoon used to trap monsters. Light suddenly realized that the carpet and futon he had been using were also made of that magic thread. Mei then gave him the basic training strategy. Light only needed to throw rocks from a distance to attack the monster, and Mei would handle the rest. Light briefly considered forcing the gacha to get a stronger weapon than a rock, but Mei reminded him that Light's level was still very low, only level 15. If he insisted on using a powerful weapon while his basic strength was insufficient, the risk could be fatal. Mei said this because she didn't want Light to get hurt, even if it made her seem overly protective. Light finally agreed, and they started the first training session. Mei summoned the first target monster, a hellhound, a large black dog with a hellfire aura, level 1000. The monster was already trapped inside Mei's white cocoon. Light hesitated when told to attack because the monster looked in pain, but Mei assured Light he didn't need to feel pity. Light then mustered his courage, threw a rock at the monster, and managed to hit the target, although the damage was 0. But most importantly, Light successfully made a direct attack, and that was a good start for leveling up. From the results of the experiment, Light finally understood how the EXP system in this world worked. EXP points were divided based on contribution to the fight, so even assisting with a healing item or a small attack would still grant a share of EXP. With this simple method, Light could slowly level up without having to engage in a major fight immediately. Mei knew the horizontal strike technique Light used was not common, but in the current situation, it was the most efficient method for fast leveling. A moment later, the monster was completely defeated. Mei immediately stopped the training and checked Light's condition. Light was shocked to see his status rise drastically, jumping from level 15 to level 70 inches a short time. Mei smiled proudly and said that was just the beginning. Light, who hadn't expected to be that strong, became even more motivated. Afterward, the two walked towards the next location, an area filled with large crystals that reflected a strange light from the abyss walls. The air there was cold but calm, and their footsteps echoed softly among the giant stones. Mei stood in front, looking at Light while reminding him that the training session wasn't over. With a serious yet calm face, Mei said it was time for them to start again. Light nodded slightly, feeling more ready than before, and they stepped forward into the shadows of the large crystals to continue their leveling journey. Light continued to train tirelessly, spending his time throwing rocks at the monsters Mei had tamed. Although it seemed trivial, every throw had a great meaning for him. Little by little, Light began to inflict actual damage. The progress was small, but enough to make him happy, meaning he was growing stronger. In his heart, Light realized that nothing was more important than raising his status to survive in a harsh place like the Abyss. But on the other hand, Light still felt weak. A small attack could cost him his life. Guilt began to surface, because all this time, Mei had not only saved his life, but also continued to protect him, despite him clearly still being a burden. Because of this, Light was determined not to burden Mei any longer. Mei, seeing Light's progress, realized that her master was starting to be able to fight on his own. Thus, Mei decided to invite Light to continue hunting monsters to accumulate more EXP points. Their leveling method was arguably cheating, but to survive in the Abyss, it was the only sensible way. Every time they fought, Light shouted enthusiastically in the face of the threatening monsters, trying to convince himself that he had to become stronger. At one point, he began to contemplate the human level limit. It felt absurd. How could he, an ordinary human, reach level 1000, while other races like dragon men, elves, dark elves, and even the demon race were capped at level 1002? But Mei remained confident. In her opinion, if it was Light, such a thing was not impossible. In fact, Mei believed that Light had a natural talent to continuously grow without limits. Mei did apologize for not being able to gather stronger monsters for Light's training yet, but Light didn't mind. According to Mei, the normal human limit was only up to level 100. Beast races like centaurs had a limit of around 200, 300. Dwarves could reach 500, 700. The demon race was between 300, 1000. Meanwhile, elves, dark elves, and dragonmen could cap at 1000. So, it was understandable why Light was surprised that he could surpass that number. Mei theorized that perhaps Light had no level limit at all. It might also be because his EXP growth system was strange, perhaps requiring a larger point range each time he wanted to level up. The explanation made sense in Light's head, although it still left him silent. Finally, they agreed to stop for a while. Mei said that the monsters in the dungeon were no longer strong enough to give significant EXP. Yet, they were in the abyss, the largest, strongest, and most terrifying dungeon in the entire world. But strangely, Mei still said the monsters here were not enough to train Light anymore. After thinking, Mei suggested they take a break. Light also realized that he had been training non-stop, so they decided to pause for a moment and rest properly. But Mei had an additional idea. Before eating, why not take a bath together first to get clean and refreshed? Light was instantly shocked to hear that. In his mind, the bath she meant must be like the hot springs typically used by kings and nobles, a luxurious place that was clearly impossible to create in an underground dungeon like the Abyss. But Mei looked relaxed, saying it wasn't a big deal. And in a short time, with her magical power, Mei managed to create a bathing area, complete with a large tub filled with steaming hot water. Light was dumbfounded because the bathing spot seemed to appear out of thin air. Mei then prepared a towel and told Light to wash up before getting into the tub. But Light panicked even more when he realized Mei intended to join him. Mei explained calmly that for a true maid, bathing her master was commonplace, a part of her duty and a form of dedication. She even said that such a thing was natural, as innate as water flowing to low ground or birds flying in the sky. The explanation silenced Light. In his heart, he was still confused. But because Mei was the one talking and seemed so sure, he finally obeyed. Mei began to bathe Light gently. The warm water being poured felt soothing. Mei's soft skin and warm body temperature made Light feel awkward, but also comfortable. Mei said it was to ensure Light's body was clean of dirt and stayed warm in the cold dungeon temperature. Then she started washing Light's hair with shampoo that had previously come out of the unlimited gacha skill. Light was told to close his eyes so the foam wouldn't get in, and Mei washed his hair slowly, ensuring everything was clean. After that, Mei continued cleaning Light's body. Light tried to refuse and said he could do it himself, but Mei insisted that it was also part of her duty as a maid. After finishing, Mei invited Light into the bathtub. Hot steam filled the room, and Light began to lower his body into the water, feeling very relaxed. But before he could settle down, Mei got into and immediately sat behind him, embracing him. Light was certainly startled, but Mei explained that the hug was a different kind of comfort and warmth from the hot water, a gentle warmth coming from herself. Light felt strange, but somehow his heart also became calmer. The hug, which initially made him nervous, slowly turned into something soothing. Mei looked at Light and said that her entire existence was now solely for Light. Her life, her power, and her purpose were only to protect Light with all her heart. The sentence sounded serious and sincere, leaving Light speechless except to look back with a flushed face. After that, Mei added that from now on, they would bathe together every day to keep Light healthy and refreshed. She also invited him to eat after they finished bathing. Light, who was initially still hesitant, finally accepted with a visibly reddened face. And just like that, their new habit began. In the following days, the routine continued. Light and Mei bathed together daily, trained hard, ate together, and constantly strengthened themselves within the abyss. Time passed quickly. 1 month went by without them realizing it, and Light had now reached level 4,000. From someone who couldn't even deal damage before, Light now stood proudly holding a large spear in his hand, ready to face the soul dragon monster waiting ahead. All the effort, training, and companionship with Mei had finally brought Light to this point, a point where his strength could no longer be underestimated by anyone. Light and Mei were resting on the ground floor of the Abyss dungeon after a long, exhausting training session. The surrounding atmosphere was silent and tense, with only the sound of running water and the characteristic damp air of an underground location. Light sat leaning against the stone wall, contemplating his achievements so far. The monster's levels in the Abyss ranged between 1,000 and 4,000. And as Mei had once said, Light's level increase was starting to slow down. However, despite all this, their life in the dungeon wasn't entirely difficult. Thanks to Light's unlimited gacha gift, the two could live quite luxuriously, despite being in the depths of this dangerous underworld. From the gift, Light could even create various facilities for comfortable survival, from resting places, food, to combat gear. In the silence, Light began to ponder a rather heavy issue. He wanted to reach a higher level, even targeting level 9,999. But deep down, Light realized that seemed impossible. He had already reached a capacity far exceeding that of an ordinary human, and even though he continued to train, his level number seemed stuck in place. Mei, observing Light, then brought up an idea. Mei suggested that Light try utilizing the unlimited gacha power again to summon a powerful monster, a high-level creature that could be used as a sparring partner. According to Mei, with the help of these creatures, Light could accelerate his level increase. In fact, if the summoned creature had a power comparable to Mei's, then fighting them would be far more effective for Light's development. However, before Mei could explain further, Light reacted with anger. Light remembered his dark past, when he was betrayed by his own friends. He couldn't forget how the gathering of races, the group he once considered comrades, easily betrayed him without remorse. That memory was still firmly embedded, and because of it, Light strongly rejected Mei's idea, which sounded like a suggestion to sacrifice or betray others. For him, no reason could justify such an action, even with the goal of becoming stronger. Mei, realizing her mistake, immediately bowed and apologized. Mei regretted her words and felt guilty for angering Light. In her sadness, Mei embraced Light with tears streaming down her face. Light returned the hug, trying to soothe Mei's feelings. He knew that without Mei, he probably wouldn't have survived this far. Light asked Mei to stop talking about things like sacrificing friends, because for him, Mei's presence was the most valuable thing. Mei then answered with sincerity that everything she did was only for Light, her master whom she loved and protected with all her heart. After the atmosphere calmed down, Light refocused on his goal. Although he rejected the idea of sacrifice, his desire to level up remained strong. Light finally decided to fight the strongest monster at the bottom of the abyss, the dungeon guardian monster called Orochi. Mei supported the decision, and the two began to prepare for the fight. Before starting, Light said that for now, he wanted to train first. He wanted to test his strength by fighting alone without Mei's help. Mei could only remind Light not to push himself, because if Light was truly in danger, Mei would definitely step in. The monster they were facing this time was no ordinary creature. Its level was around 5,000, and it was known as the core guardian of the dungeon. But Light remained confident. As long as Mei was by his side, they wouldn't lose. Finally, they arrived in front of the large dungeon gate that marked the start of the battle area. A dark aura felt oppressive from behind the massive door, and Light could sense an incredibly powerful magical energy. Mei, who was always protective, warned Light to be careful. But Light only managed a small smile, knowing that Mei had been like that from the start. According to Mei, protecting her master was part of a true maid's duty. When the gate opened, the two immediately saw the colossal figure that guarded the dungeon, Orochi, a seven-headed dragon with a massive body and gleaming black scales. The monster dominated the entire room with a terrifying aura. Mei quickly explained its stats. Orochi was level 5,000 with incredible magical and physical endurance. Each of its heads had a different ability, ranging from fire elements and poison to body regeneration. Even worse, Orochi could also create subordinates from its own blood. Light was silent for a moment, feeling small in the face of such a huge creature. He realized his level was still far below Orochi's. But before he could think further, Orochi suddenly let out a burst of hot fire from one of its heads, forcing Light to immediately jump out of the way. The attack was so fast and strong that it made the dungeon floor tremble violently. Light immediately grabbed his spear, Uragan, a phantasm-class weapon that had the ability to increase the user's speed. Thanks to that effect, Light could dodge Orochi's attacks more swiftly. he began to launch a counterattack with a card from Unlimited Gacha. The first card he released was SSR Explosive Flame, a high-level fire magic attack that he aimed directly at Orochi's body. A large explosion occurred, and the room was filled with hot red light. But after the smoke disappeared, Orochi still stood tall. The monster roared loudly, and Light realized his attack had made no significant impact. Orochi was apparently immune to fire. Light held his breath, trying to think fast. He realized that Orochi's defense was much higher than he had anticipated. Mei briefly offered help, but Light refused. He insisted on facing the battle alone. As a master, Light felt his responsibility was not only to win, but also to prove that he was worthy to lead and fight without relying on others. Light affirmed in his heart that he would not run from this fight. His goal was not only to defeat Orochi, but also to move closer to the truth he was seeking and his revenge against the gathering of races that had destroyed his life. With strong resolve, Light gripped the Urigen spear and charged directly toward Orochi's head. The attack was successful. His spear pierced one of Orochi's heads and elicited a loud roar. Light began to feel confident, thinking he could win without Mei's help. But that conviction lasted only briefly, because the severed head of Orochi suddenly grew back in an instant. The open wound immediately closed due to rapid regeneration, and from the blood dripping onto the floor, dozens of small, repulsive, insect-like monsters emerged. Mei, seeing this, immediately panicked. She realized this was what Orochi's ability meant. Its blood could birth new subordinates. But Light still forced himself to continue the battle alone. He activated a new card from Unlimited Gacha, SSR Blue Rose. As soon as the card was released, a beautiful yet deadly blue rose-shaped magic attack emerged from his hand, then quickly launched to hit the swarm of small monsters rushing from all directions. The battle continued, and Light stood tall amidst the magical energy blaze, facing Orochi, the terrifying seven-headed dragon, the symbol of supreme power at the bottom of the abyss. Light stood in the middle of the dungeon room, which was still shaking after the large explosion. Black smoke billowed from the scorched floor, and the smell of blood mixed with dust filled the air. From the spilled blood of Orochi, small, insect-like monsters appeared one by one, but Light remained calm and immediately controlled the situation with card attacks. With a face full of focus, Light felt satisfied that the situation was still manageable. In his heart, Light realized that even though Orochi's attacks were brutal, he was still capable of facing them all. While attempting to fire blue flames from the Blue Rose Fire card, Light was surprised that the attack had no effect. The blue flames, which should have burned anything, only left small scorch marks on Orochi's body. Light began to realize that Orochi was no ordinary monster. From his observation, 3 of Orochi's heads focused on attacking him, while the other 4 stared intently at Mei. This made Light realize that Orochi was more wary of Mei than of himself. In his mind, Light calmly analyzed the situation. Orochi's level was much higher than his, but that didn't mean it couldn't be defeated. A difference of 1,000 levels wasn't a problem if the strategy and timing of the attack were right. Light was determined to fight Orochi alone because he didn't want to burden Mei anymore. However, the main problem lay in Orochi's ability to regenerate its heads and body every time it was injured. Ordinary attacks would only worsen the situation, as the monster's blood would birth more small insects. Light thought quickly and finally decided to release a new card. With a slowly increasing aura, Light activated the card SSSR Dust Dance. Sharp winds spun around him, turning into a small storm that shredded every monster around Orochi. But Light didn't stop there. He immediately combined it with the SSSR Thunder card, which unleashed a massive lightning bolt, hitting Orochi's body hard. A large explosion occurred, shaking the entire dungeon room. The aura from the attack was so strong that Light himself staggered momentarily. In his mind, Light admitted that the card was too dangerous to use in a dungeon like this. The explosive power was great, but the space was narrow, so the attack's effect could bounce back at any time. As the dust began to thin, Light looked at Orochi's body, which seemed badly burned, but not long after, the monster regenerated its necks and body. The severed pieces of flesh writhed, turning into new insects that immediately attacked back. Seeing this, Light snorted in annoyance. In his mind, Light realized that Orochi could even multiply itself from damaged body parts. The monster's heads actually increased in number, likely more than 7 now. Without hesitation, Light swung the Uragan spear and created a large wind vortex that shot like a tornado, hitting Orochi's newly grown body. But strangely, when Light tried to launch a follow-up attack using Blue Rose Fire, the attack was absorbed by Orochi's body. The next attack, SSR Ice Prison, also failed completely. The monster was completely unaffected by ice magic. From a safe distance, Mei explained that Orochi was now capable of strengthening its resistance and that of its subordinates against elements like fire, wind, and lightning. This explanation made Light understand the situation better. If Orochi continued to live and regenerate, the entire dungeon would be filled with increasingly stronger monsters. The only option was to defeat Orochi completely before its regeneration continued. Light briefly wondered how Mei could defeat a creature like this easily while he was still struggling. But Light didn't want to give up. Although Mei looked worried, Light still showed firmness. In his adult form, Light told Mei to trust him completely. Light didn't want anyone's help this time. With a determined expression, Light focused his power on his spear. With steady steps, Light swung Uragan and created a large wind barrier to protect himself. Then, fire gathered into a large energy ball in his hand, and he activated the Fire Explosion card. A massive explosion occurred again, hitting Orochi directly. Soon, Light added a follow-up attack with the SR Explosive Bomb card. Chunks of ice shot rapidly like bullets, hitting Orochi and sending it stumbling backward. This time, his attack successfully injured the large monster. Not stopping there, Light immediately launched a physical attack using the Thorns of Steel card. Steel thorns emerged from the ground, piercing Orochi's body and the insect monsters around it. Every time his attack hit the target, Light became more convinced that physical attacks were much more effective. Without pause, Light continued to attack relentlessly until Orochi let out a loud roar and appeared to be in pain. However, even though he seemed cornered, Light knew the fight wasn't over. In his mind, Light felt that Orochi actually thought it had cornered him. But in reality, being surrounded by many enemies actually gave him an advantage. Because in that situation, Light still had one last card, the strongest card he had just obtained from Unlimited Gacha. Light gripped the ultra-rare card tightly while staring at Orochi. A powerful aura radiated from his body, and the dungeon trembled as if responding to the power about to be unleashed. Light knew Orochi could also sense the danger from the card, but it was too late to dodge. With a serious tone, Light activated it and launched the ultra-rare card, Whir Venom. From the card emerged a greenish-black liquid that spread like a poisonous mist. However, it wasn't ordinary poison, as the liquid was corrosive and began to erode Orochi's body and all the monsters around it. Light explained in his mind that Whir Venom worked on the principle of corrosion. The wider the area and the more targets, the faster the corrosive effect produced. This attack was not poison-based, so it could not be neutralized or detoxified. The attack's effect worsened every time Orochi tried to regenerate. Every part of the body that grew back was immediately devoured by the corrosive slime mold formed by the attack. Gradually, Orochi's entire body was badly damaged, its skin peeling off, and its roaring began to weaken. The monster that dominated the abyss was finally helpless, its body decaying in place. Light, now in his masked elf form, walked closer to Orochi's almost formless remains. In a flat and cold tone, Light stared at it and said internally that he had no personal grudge against Orochi. However, the existence of this monster had become an important stepping stone for his goal. For Light, Orochi was just an obstacle that needed to be removed in order to take revenge on the Gathering of Races, the group that had destroyed his life. After ensuring Orochi was completely destroyed, Light stood amidst the remaining flames and said internally that all this was just a small step in the long journey toward true retribution. Light finally stood in the middle of a large, dark, and damp room where Orochi had just fallen after a brutal fight. The remains of the giant monster were now chunks of flesh scattered on the floor, and from those pieces emerged small, crawling insects, making the atmosphere even more repulsive. Light looked at everything with heavy breaths, his body still covered in scars and slime from the battle. His strongest venom had just exploded Orochi's body, utterly destroying it. Internally, Light felt satisfied yet exhausted, but seeing the pieces of flesh giving rise to new slime mold, he realized that the place was like a never-ending vicious cycle. Eventually, Orochi completely lost its strength and collapsed instantly. Light observed his surroundings and sighed. The entire room was now covered in slime mold, creeping along the walls and floor. Small monsters emerged from the darkness, but none were as strong as Orochi. Light briefly considered whether there might be a card that could cleanse all that slime, something that could neutralize the poison of this strange place. Mei, standing behind him, only smiled faintly. Her manner of speaking remained calm, as if not at all surprised by what had just happened. Mei reminded Light not to be rash, although she understood that Light was confident in his unlimited gacha card. She only wanted to ensure Light remained careful, especially after facing a creature as strong as Orochi. After ensuring the room was safe, Light and Mei continued walking through the corridor toward the innermost part of the dungeon. Both realized that after Orochi was defeated, they must be getting closer to the core of the abyss. Upon arriving there, Light was stunned. Before him lay a giant energy sphere that pulsed softly with a dim bluish light. Its size was much larger than he had imagined. The atmosphere was strange, neither hot nor cold, but there was a strong aura that made the air around it feel dense. Mei explained that it was the dungeon core, the source of the magical power of the abyss itself. Mei looked at the dungeon core with a serious expression. She explained to Light that, although she had no intention of destroying it, the power stored there was too important to ignore. Light's gift, unlimited gacha, could only be used stably if there was dense, magical energy, like in this abyss. That was why she wanted to maintain the dungeon core so it could become their future power center. Mei also added that they could not leave the dungeon in its current state, still dangerous and uncontrolled. She explained that Light needed to build strength within this abyss, even forming his own country to fight the great powers on the surface. For that, unlimited gacha needed the concentrated magical energy from the abyss core to produce new, stronger cards. However, Mei admitted that she could not control the dungeon core. She could do many things, but controlling such a massive source of magic was truly impossible. But if Light reached level 9,999 like herself, or if they could summon someone skilled in magical analysis, it might be possible. Mei suggested that Light entrust the matter of controlling the dungeon core to the person who would be summoned later through unlimited gacha. After discussion, Light decided to settle in the area around the dungeon core. The place felt safe because no monsters appeared around it, and Mei thought it was the perfect location for Light to learn. She planned to teach Light many things, from the basics of magic, strategy, to battle theory. Light initially complained, saying he disliked studying, but Mei explained that all of it was crucial for his revenge plan later. Light finally agreed, especially after seeing Mei's serious face, which showed genuine care for his development. They began living in the dungeon core room. Every day, Mei patiently taught Light. Light initially struggled, but slowly he started to get used to it. Although not as smart as Mei, Light could still write his name and learn to count so he wouldn't be cheated when dealing in the city later. In his mind, Light knew that all this was for his future and his revenge, so he was determined to continue studying diligently. 2 months passed. Light finally succeeded in summoning a new card through unlimited gacha, this time a super ultra rare Sur card. The card brought forth a small girl with a unique costume and a powerful aura named Aoyuki, a genius monster tamer at level 9,999. Light felt relieved to finally have a new ally in the abyss. He knew challenges would continue to come, so Aoyuki's presence could be very helpful. The following months, Light began to think of a way to control the dungeon core. He suspected that, since the core could create monsters, perhaps the dungeon core itself had characteristics similar to a monster tamer. After 3 months passed, Light tried summoning a new card again. This time, the one who appeared was a beautiful woman with long hair and a large witch hat, Ellie, the forbidden sorceress at level 9,999. Ellie looked confident and immediately said that controlling the dungeon core was easy for her, as she mastered all forms of magic and forbidden techniques. Light entrusted the task to her. A month later, the result was not smooth. Ellie looked frustrated because the dungeon core turned out to be far more complicated than she had anticipated. Light tried to calm her with light jokes, and Nazuna, the vampire knight who was also summoned via a Sur card, just stood silently in the back, observing. Nazuna was cheerful and served as an entertainer for the group. Soon after, Light summoned a new Sur card again. This time, it was Nazuna, the pioneer vampire knight, also at level 9,999. Nazuna had high spirits and immediately joined Light's training. She taught Light how to use various types of weapons, especially the spear. However, Nazuna's movements were too fast and complex, making it difficult for Light to keep up with her rhythm. Nevertheless, Light kept trying, internally acknowledging that Nazuna was indeed very talented. A year passed since Light was thrown into the abyss. Ellie finally arrived with a beaming face, announcing that she had successfully analyzed and controlled the dungeon core. She could now regulate the creation of monsters and traps within the dungeon according to command. Light was overjoyed to hear it, even congratulating her with great enthusiasm. Now they could begin renovating the abyss and turning it into a truly safe and controlled place. Ellie only requested a little more time to perfect the transfer of magical energy, but generally, everything was going smoothly. Once the dungeon control was stable, Light immediately moved to the next phase of his plan. He began talking to Ellie about his long-term goals, building power in the abyss, summoning elf maids and skilled construction workers, and strengthening their military so they could be recognized by the surface nations. All this was done to take revenge on those who had thrown him away. Light gave a direct order to Ellie to begin summoning forces using the Nightmare Summon technique. With strong allies like Mei, Aoyuki, Ellie, and Nazuna by his side, Light stood tall in front of the dungeon core, which now pulsed steadily. He looked at everyone and stated his goal firmly: to achieve level 9,999 and avenge all the humiliation he had received. From the darkest place in the world, Light's journey to the peak of power was truly just beginning. The great battle began when Light and his team prepared to face a group of monsters with incredible magical power. Light summoned a high-level magic called Nightmare Summon, a forbidden magic capable of opening a gate to another world and drawing ferocious monsters from within. The magic was so dangerous that Ellie, known as a forbidden sorceress, could only use it once a day, depending on the perfection of the incantation. The magical power fell into the ultimate magic category, the highest type, unknown to many even among high-class mages. As soon as the magic was active, a dense aura filled the air. The dimensional door opened, and hundreds of monsters and demons with levels close to 9,000 emerged from the darkness. The monsters immediately rampaged out of control, destroying everything around them. But Light and his team were ready. They moved with sharp coordination. Mei managed defense and support. Aoyuki summoned her familiar creatures. Ellie prepared binding magic, while Light was on the front line with his shining spear. The battle was fierce. Attack after attack collided, magical lights scattered, and the air around them seemed to tremble every time a massive blow was unleashed. Light exerted all his strength, thrusting his spear with incredible speed and power, showing how far his abilities had grown since the beginning. After a long, draining battle, all the monsters were finally defeated. In Light's hand, his status board shone brightly. The large numbers there displayed 9,999, the highest level a human could achieve. The moment made the entire team smile proudly. Mei looked at Light with a happy face, congratulating him on his achievement. Light also thanked all his comrades, because their cooperation had made his goal achievable. More than 2 years had passed since the day Light was betrayed and discarded into the deepest layer of the abyss. Now, he had built immense power there with his team. In one of the meetings, Light discussed their organization's development. Everyone worked with high enthusiasm, and thanks to the card vault system, everything ran smoothly. However, one major problem remained unsolved: the exit route to the surface. Light explained that all the paths attempted, including the one called the F350 route, ended in dead ends. He was disappointed because he had been preparing to launch an invasion of the surface world, but the situation didn't allow it. Soon after, Mei came in with a serious but calm expression. Mei admitted that the abyss was far vaster and more complex than they had imagined. According to her, the upper layer that resembled an entrance was only a small part of the entire abyss, and without an exit, any amount of power would be meaningless. Amidst the confusion, Ellie brought good news. After long research for over a year, Ellie successfully unblocked the abyss transfer barrier and gained control of it. Light was amazed to hear this, praising Ellie's incredible hard work. Although the process was long, the achievement was a crucial milestone for them. With the new ability, they could finally plan tangible actions on the surface. Light and Mei then discussed the next steps. They wanted to start sending merchant cards and humans to the surface to gather important information. Mei expressed happiness at being able to continue assisting Light, while Light conveyed his gratitude for Mei's loyalty and support all this time. However, behind the grand plan, Light conveyed one personal request to Mei and Ellie. Light said he really wanted to see his hometown, the place where his father, mother, older brother, and sister, Yume, lived. Light stressed that he did not want to meet them directly, as he had not yet finished his revenge. He only wanted to know how his family was doing now. Mei and Ellie comforted Light, saying that the wish was not selfish. In fact, they also wanted to accompany him. After the decision was made, Light decided to go to the surface with his small team. Mei seemed to be preparing her best clothes, asking Ellie if the outfit was suitable for meeting Light's family. Ellie casually explained that they would be using the SSR presence eraser, so whatever Mei wore wouldn't be visible. However, Ellie still teased Mei for dressing up, even though she wouldn't be seen. Meanwhile, Light prepared the team and ensured everyone was ready. Aoyuki looked excited to see Light's hometown, while Nazuna smiled casually in the background. After everyone gathered, Light activated the SSR transfer card. Before transferring, Light explained the card's mechanism to his team. The SSR transfer could not be used carelessly, as it could only connect places with a strong bond in memory. Light chose the location where he was once betrayed by the Gathering of Races group, a place that continued to haunt him in nightmares. He chose that place because he could visualize it very clearly. When the transfer activated, a bright light enveloped them, and in an instant, Light's team moved from the abyss to the surface. Upon arrival, they immediately felt fresh air, different from the heavy air underground. The sky looked high and bright. The sunlight made them slightly squint because they had lived in darkness for so long. However, the moment turned into grief when Light looked down. What should have been his hometown was now only ruins and a large hole in the ground. There were no signs of life, only silent wreckage. Light was silent for a long time, his knees slowly dropping to the ground. His gaze was vacant, staring at the remnants of houses and roads that were once full of memories. With a heavy voice, Light realized the bitter truth before him. The place was no longer a village, but a graveyard of his own past. In silence, Light could only look at the ruins and say internally that this was his hometown. Light's steps faltered as his foot tripped among the piles of debris and ruins that had once been his childhood home. His body fell, seating him on the ground, covered in ash and building remnants. His gaze was vacant, but his mind was noisy, filled with fragments of memories of the simple life in that village. In his mind appeared the image of his aunt, the baker, whose bread was always warm and fragrant every morning. The house of the scary-faced uncle who always gave children candy when they passed by. And the small house of his sister, Yume's friend, Meme-chan. All these memories piled up until his gaze stopped at the ruins of his own home. The remnants of burnt walls and the collapsed roof made his breath catch. Light's vision began to blur when he saw the faint shadows of his father and mother standing amidst the dust and rubble, smiling as they used to. Their voices felt real in his head, making his heart pound hard. His mind tried to reject reality, trying to convince himself that this was just a nightmare, that everything was an illusion. But when Light tried to close his eyes and open them again, all the destruction remained. The memories hit hard, and Light began to scream hysterically before his body collapsed, losing consciousness. Mei, standing behind him, immediately panicked, her voice calling, Light sounding broken. Ellie, Nazuna, and Aoyuki immediately rushed toward him. A moment later, Light woke up, gasping for breath. His hands were trembling, his face was pale, and his eyes were red. All the emotions he had been holding back erupted. Light began to scream, filled with anger and despair. Every word that came out felt heavy, like piercing his own heart. He screamed furiously at fate, demanding a reason why the village had to be destroyed, why his father and mother had to be killed, why everyone in his village had to die for no reason. His voice cracked, his body trembled, and his vision blurred from the relentless tears. After a while, Light fell silent, clutching his head. Amidst his gasping breaths, sentences full of guilt and confusion emerged. Light began to question the goddess he had always believed in, demanding answers for what had happened. He began to realize that this tragedy might not be a coincidence. As someone who was rumored to be a master candidate, it was only natural that many parties would want to eliminate him. The more he thought about it, the more plausible it became that the destruction of the village was connected to his status. Light realized that if it weren't for his existence, everyone might still be alive. That realization made his heart burn even more. In a bursting fit of anger, Light stood in the middle of the still smoking ruins and swore revenge. Every word he spoke was like an oath written in the air. Light promised to hunt down anyone responsible, to kill them one by one until no one was left. His gaze was empty but cold, filled with hatred that swallowed his own sadness. After his emotions subsided slightly, Light and his team returned to the Abyss using the SSR transfer. There, Light immediately formed a special investigation team to find out who destroyed the village and massacred its residents. However, after several days of working non-stop, Light's body collapsed. His body temperature spiked high, causing everyone to panic. Ellie concluded that the cause was not injury or illness, but extreme mental shock and emotional pressure. The only thing they could do was wait for Light to recover on his own. The following days, Light was still not fully conscious. In his restless sleep, he continued to moan. Sometimes his hands grasped the air, as if trying to reach for someone. In his dreams, Light pleaded with his father and mother not to leave him alone. He blamed himself for leaving the village, for having the strange gift that made him hunted. All the guilt piled up into a tormenting nightmare. Mei, who kept watch beside him, could only stare with eyes full of worry. In between Light's restless sleep, his quiet murmurs were heard calling his sister's name, Yume, and his brother's name, Els. He kept apologizing, as if hoping the words could reach them. Seeing this, Mei held Light's hand tightly and whispered softly, even though she knew Light might not hear her yet. Mei promised in her heart that no matter what happened, she would continue to be by Light's side. Even if the path ahead was hell itself, she would not leave Light alone. Because for Mei, true happiness was being by the side of the man she loved, protecting him selflessly. A few days later, Light finally opened his eyes. His face was still pale, but his eyes were focused again. Soon after regaining consciousness, the investigation results reached him. According to the report, the village had been destroyed several years ago. From the data collected, it seemed the village was destroyed by people who held a personal grudge against the place. All the residents were mercilessly slaughtered. But there were two names whose bodies had not been found, Els and Yume. There was a possibility they had survived, but they could also have fallen victim to monsters that appeared after the incident. Light and Mei began a serious discussion about the next steps. Light explained that they had searched the area around the village but found no bodies. The options were now divided. Search for the two individuals, or focus on investigating the true mastermind behind the village's destruction. The problem was that the team's resources were limited, and the two major goals were difficult to pursue simultaneously. Light finally decided to prioritize the search for strategic information first. According to him, there was a strong link between the village tragedy and his status as a potential master. By understanding the system and the nations involved in the master business, they would most likely also find clues about Els and Yume. Sometime after that, Light sat on his throne in the abyss. The aura around him felt heavy, and the expression on his face showed a resolve that had frozen into pure hatred. Light swore again in his heart, this time calmly but deeply, that he would take revenge on anyone who had destroyed his family. He would not stop until everything was fully paid back. Half a year later, his team's power was sufficient to return to the surface. Light stood in front of a simple monument erected on the former site of his village with Mei. He knelt before the ruins while looking up at the sky. There, Light spoke softly, conveying that the preparations to retrieve Yume from the human kingdom were complete. Light smiled faintly, his eyes teary, but this time not from sadness, but from firm resolve. Afterward, Light stood tall. The wind blew the ash from the remaining ruins, while Light stared up at the high blue sky. In his mind, there was only one goal, a new journey to retrieve Yume, and the beginning of a major mission that would determine everything. The atmosphere in the human kingdom's main palace hall was tense. Princess Lilith stood before her father, the human king, with eyes that showed strong determination. In her heart, Lilith knew that what she was about to say might be disliked, but she didn't care. As the words came out, her voice immediately echoed throughout the room. Lilith pleaded for the king to reconsider his decision and grant her permission to go to the giant tower, the place rumored to have subdued the elves. The request was immediately flatly rejected. The king, with a heavy voice full of authority, asserted that Lilith was the first princess of the human kingdom, and such a rash action could be fatal. According to the king, if Lilith were associated with the giant tower, it could arouse great suspicion from other races. For the king, such a thing was not only risky, but could also invite an interracial war. He advised Lilith to restrain herself, considering her position as the heir to the throne. However, Lilith did not remain silent. Her frustration and anger peaked. In a loud tone, Lilith voiced the anger she had long suppressed. She questioned why humans always had to submit to other races. For her, human weakness was not a reason to be continually looked down upon. According to Lilith, it was time for humans to show their own strength. The giant tower, rumored to have freed the elf slaves, became a symbol of the change she hoped for. Lilith believed that forging a relationship with them could pave the way for humanity's rise. In her mind, if humans did nothing, they would continue to live as a weak race exploited by other species. Lilith then knelt before the throne steps, pleading with all her heart before the king and her older brother, the first prince. Her expression looked desperate, but her eyes still radiated determination. The king, although clearly looking hesitant and anxious, finally ended the conversation with a firm tone. He stated that weak humans would not be able to compete with other races. For him, bowing the head and acting humbly was the only way for humans to survive. He did not want to hear any more talk about the giant tower. Lilith tried to argue, but the king had closed the discussion. He asserted that the rumors about the giant tower were merely boastful tales, and any action involving them would only endanger humanity. The king also did not want the rumors to spread and become a topic of discussion for other races. Lilith then approached the first prince, her older brother, who was always known to be wise but overly cautious. Lilith asked for her brother's help to persuade the king to consider cooperation with the giant tower. According to Lilith, this was not just a personal wish, but for the honor of all humanity. However, her brother did not immediately respond. After a moment of silence, the first prince finally conveyed that he also opposed the idea. With a heavy voice, the first prince explained that the rumors about the giant tower's power might be exaggerated. He said that their power was great because it was supported by the elf queen and a number of dragons. But it was impossible for those dragons to help the human kingdom, which had nothing to exchange. He asserted that the giant tower had its own interests and would not care about human suffering. Then, the first prince explained the actual condition of their kingdom on the world map. The human kingdom had no sea access, so they were forced to buy salt from other races to survive. Salt was a vital necessity, and without it, humans could not live. He added that even if the rumors about dragons were true, they likely did not have enough dragons to cover the sky. According to him, before humans could even fight back, their necks were already constrained by the economic power of other races. Hearing this, Lilith was immediately provoked emotionally. She asserted that depending on other races was not a worthy way of life. She was disgusted that the kingdom had to remain silent while its people were secretly sold for trade. According to her, such a state was not a sovereign kingdom, but merely a colony controlled by other races. She called their condition a cattle kingdom. Humans lived only to be exploited. The first prince looked at his sister with a complicated gaze. He understood Lilith's anger, but also knew the bitter reality they had to face. In a calm voice, he explained that sometimes cruel decisions were the only way to survive. According to him, the royal family's duty was to make cold decisions to save the many, even if it meant sacrificing the few. He disliked the human trafficking situation, but believed it was the only way to maintain stability. Sometime after the debate, Lilith returned to her private quarters. The servants greeted her respectfully, but Lilith looked gloomy and did not respond. Yume, Light's sister, who worked as a maid in the palace, was present to serve Lilith politely. Yume's face displayed a sincere smile, but Lilith remained silent, lost in her own thoughts. One of the servants, Nono, offered to make tea, and Lilith merely nodded briefly. Not long after, a servant arrived carrying a letter. The letter was from the Elf Queen's kingdom, more precisely, from the Elf Queen herself. Lilith was briefly surprised to receive a letter directly from the ruler of the race that was generally considered the most arrogant of all. As she read the contents, Lilith's eyes slowly widened. The letter turned out to be a formal invitation to visit the giant tower, and it was written in the name of the great sorceress who led the tower. For Lilith, the letter felt like a sign of destiny, or perhaps a guiding clue from the goddess. She realized this could be a rare opportunity to prove something. Without overthinking, Lilith met her older brother, the first prince, again and explained her plan. She said that this invitation was a chance to directly examine the lives of the humans who had been freed from slavery by the giant tower. She also added that this request came directly through the Elf Queen, so her father and brother could not politically oppose it. Lilith affirmed that she would go herself to ascertain the condition of humanity there. In her mind, this journey was not just diplomacy, but the first step toward a new future for the human race. With a strong aristocratic aura radiating from her, Lilith swore to utilize this opportunity to the fullest. She would pave the way for all humanity and meet directly with the sorceress of the giant tower, the mysterious figure who was now the last hope for the revival of the human race. In a private room in the palace, Princess Lilith was sitting relaxed, discussing a serious matter with her maid, Nono. In her hand, she still held the invitation from the Elf Queen, the letter that had recently become the talk of the entire palace. Lilith confidently explained to Nono that her father and Kuro, her older brother, had no strong reason to refuse the invitation, especially since the request came directly from the Elf Queen herself to conduct an inspection of the giant tower. However, Nono looked uneasy. Her expression reflected strong suspicion towards the invitation. In her view, all of this was too suspicious, as if something was being hidden. Nono carefully reminded Princess Lilith that the rumors about the giant tower were often exaggerated. She worried that the invitation was just a trap. Perhaps the giant tower intended to brainwash Lilith with magic or even trap her, especially since they were known to possess many dragons. Lilith remained firm in her stance. According to her, since the invitation came directly from the Elf Queen, there was no reason to refuse. Besides, she had no intention of refusing anyway. For her, this was a great opportunity to conduct a direct inspection of the place that had been shrouded in mystery. Although internally she knew the risk was great, like deliberately jumping into the mouth of a demon king. Nono, who had been with Lilith since childhood, felt worried, especially imagining the princess of the kingdom going alone to such a dangerous place. With a serious face, Nono said she could not bear to let Lilith go unsupervised. Lilith, feeling she was old enough, asserted with a slightly irritated tone that she was now 15 years old and no longer a child. However, despite her firm words, Lilith still paid attention to Nono's concerns. She asked Nono to inform the servants to prepare for any worst-case scenario and to find volunteers ready to accompany her. Hearing that, Nono finally smiled faintly, yielding to the princess's stubbornness. She joked, saying that to Nono, Princess Lilith would always look cute, regardless of her age. Her words slightly eased the tension. Nono even laughed softly, trying to mask her nervousness ahead of the big journey. The day of departure arrived. Outside the human royal palace, the atmosphere was incredibly crowded. People flocked to the square to witness a sight they had never seen before. Some citizens shouted enthusiastically upon hearing the news that a dragon from the giant tower would come to pick up Princess Lilith. Some were disbelieving, while others were deeply curious because they had never seen a dragon in person. Meanwhile, the nobles stood with a calmer demeanor, although it was evident they were just as curious. They discussed the importance of maintaining respectful behavior toward the envoy of the giant tower. For them, a polite welcome was not just about etiquette, but also a diplomatic strategy, so the human kingdom could be viewed more favorably by other races. A moment later, a shout was heard from the sky. People pointed upward with expressions of awe. A massive figure with giant wings, glittering under the sunlight, emerged from the clouds. A real dragon glided down majestically, accompanied by an envoy from the giant tower standing on its back. The sight made many people freeze in awe and fear simultaneously. Lilith, standing in front of the palace, only smiled faintly. Internally, she felt this welcome sufficiently demonstrated how seriously the giant tower took the invitation. Soon after, the dragon landed gently, and a young woman in characteristic black witch attire descended from atop it, introducing herself as Mei, the official envoy from the giant tower. The first prince, Kuro, stepped forward to welcome Mei, representing the king, who was unwell. Kuro expressed thanks and conveyed respect for the envoy's arrival. He then asked if they could proceed directly to the giant tower as requested for the inspection. Mei politely replied that all necessities had been prepared by the tower and they would facilitate the entire journey safely. Mei also added one small request. She hoped Princess Lilith could bring someone her age during the inspection to make the atmosphere more comfortable and the interaction more natural. Kuro agreed to the condition, and Lilith consented. Soon after, Mei pointed to Yume, the young girl working as a maid in the palace, who was also Light's sister, to join the journey. After everything was ready, Mei stood in front of the large dragon, raising her hand. Lilith briefly thought that such a massive dragon would not be enough to accommodate everyone, but Mei just smiled and said they would move to a different location in a different way. In an instant, Mei uttered a massive teleportation spell, enveloping the entire entourage in light and making them vanish from sight. When the light subsided, Lilith and her entourage were standing in a completely different place, the giant tower. Everyone was shocked. Kuro couldn't even hide his astonishment. He hadn't expected long-distance teleportation items could be used so easily. In his mind, only truly wealthy and powerful kingdoms could afford to do so casually. Mei then politely welcomed them and ushered them inside the first floor of the tower. She explained that the viewing room was on the 3rd floor, and the main sorceress of the giant tower was waiting to meet Lilith and Kuro privately. The entourage was directed to the prepared rooms. Mei explained in detail that the resting rooms were divided into 2, one for men and one for women. Some of the guards were suspicious of the division, but Mei calmly explained the reason was so they could rest and converse without feeling awkward. Before leaving, Mei left a message for them not to hesitate to call her if they needed anything, while warning that maintaining proper conduct was important while in the giant tower. The still wary guards finally chose to follow the instructions, realizing they were not in a strong position to refuse. The waiting room provided turned out to be far more luxurious than they had imagined. The guards even felt uncomfortable because the atmosphere was more like a royal living room than a typical rest area. However, their awe turned into tension when they realized someone was lurking from a distance, even though there were no clear suspicious signs. Amidst that atmosphere, Light and his sister, Yume, finally reunited in the room. Upon seeing Yume's face, Light was immediately shocked and couldn't believe his eyes. Meanwhile, Yume looked at her brother with eyes wide with surprise and happiness at the same time. The moment turned into an emotional reunion. Without saying much, the two immediately embraced tightly, releasing the longing that had been held back during the long journey full of mystery that had just begun at the giant tower. The meeting between Light and Yume happened so suddenly, yet emotionally. After being separated for so long, the two siblings finally stood in the same room. Upon seeing Light's face, Yume immediately ran and hugged her brother tightly. Her tears broke out uncontrollably, her body trembling with the emotions she had suppressed all this time. Light returned the hug forcefully, and the atmosphere, which had been tense, turned into an emotional moment. Yume kept calling her brother while crying, while Light, in a tone of relief, replied while hugging her tighter, feeling grateful that his sister was alive and well. Ellie, along with Mei and some other servants in the room, could only stand silent, observing the scene. They hadn't expected that the young girl they had briefly considered ordinary was actually Light's biological sister. Their faces showed a mix of surprise, confusion, and relief. After a while, Light finally calmed Yume and began to explain the situation to his friends, who were still confused. Light ensured everyone was safe and didn't need to panic. Light explained that the person they saw was not an enemy, and Yume was truly on their side. Ravel and the others could only stare blankly, disbelieving the strange situation that had just occurred. Light then looked at Mei, apologizing for the sudden appearance. Light said he should have appeared after Mei had finished preparing everything, but upon seeing Yume, all plans immediately fell apart. Mei, who was known for her composure, only bowed politely and introduced herself as Light's level 9,999 search servant. Light nodded casually, finding it normal because all his servants had extraordinary abilities. The atmosphere then slightly thawed. Yume began to look at Light with a mixed expression of confusion and awe. The little sister was puzzled by how everyone treated her brother like a great noble. Yume quietly asked the meaning of level 9,999 servant mentioned earlier. Light was slightly startled, then looked at Yume from head to toe, chuckling softly, finding it strange that his sister hadn't changed much since they last parted. After that, Light briefly explained that many major things had happened to him since leaving the village. But since the place wasn't comfortable for a long conversation, Light invited Yume to move to another location so they could talk more calmly. However, Yume looked hesitant. Yume said that she was currently working as Princess Lilith's servant, so she couldn't leave just like that. Yume was worried the head maid would be angry, but Light just shook his head, saying she didn't need to worry. Light then pulled out a card and gave it to Yume, asking his sister to say the word release. Yume was confused but eventually followed the instruction. Instantly, Yume's body shone softly, and from the light emerged another figure identical to her, from her face and clothes to her body aura. Yume herself was shocked to see her own shadow standing before her eyes. Light then explained that the card was the UR double shadow card. This card could create a shadow of the user that was indistinguishable from the original, complete with the same clothes, and even capable of mimicking some of the abilities and gifts. Only its power was slightly lower than the original. Yume finally understood. The shadow would be left in the human kingdom to replace her temporarily. That way, the people in the palace would not realize that Yume had actually left with Light. Light explained that he also used the same technique for himself. So even though Light was on the surface, the unlimited gacha card could still run in the deepest part of the dungeon because his own shadow was operating it. Before leaving, Light looked at Yume's shadow and told her to leave everything to him. Yume's shadow obediently replied, saying everything was understood and would be handled well. After that, Light invited the real Yume to come with him and reminded her not to stray far. Before teleportation, Light asked Mei to erase the memory of his presence from the people in the room so as not to arouse suspicion. Mei agreed, and Light then activated the high-level teleportation magic with the command SSR Transfer Release. As soon as the teleportation was complete, Yume opened her eyes and was immediately shocked by the sight before her. They were now in a completely different place, with many strong people gathered. Light smiled faintly and explained that everyone there was his comrade. Yume, still stunned, tried to comprehend everything. Light then introduced Yume to Aoyuki, the monster tamer, and Nazuna, the vampire knight, who was also an important member of Light's party. Both immediately greeted her politely. Nazuna, who had a warm personality, immediately commented on how cute Yume was, even comparing her to a kitten. Nazuna looked very happy, becoming protective and saying Yume could ask her for help with anything. Yume smiled shyly but happily. Since then, Yume started calling Nazuna, Nazuna Oni-chan, big sister Nazuna, and repeated it several times with a smile. Nazuna was surprised but then laughed happily, looking confused yet proud to be called that by Light's sister. Afterward, Gold tried to ease the atmosphere because the introductions were getting long. Gold reminded them that Yume must be tired, and Light immediately agreed. Light said that the more complete introductions would be done later after Yume rested. Light then apologized to all the party members for having to postpone the official introduction, and everyone understood. Ice Heat, one of Light's loyal servants known for her ice and fire abilities, then stepped forward to introduce herself to Yume. With full respect, Ice Heat called herself Light's loyal servant and addressed Yume as Little Sister Hime, Sama Little Princess. Ice Heat also said that she would guide Yume to the room for rest. The walk to the room felt warm. Light walked side by side with Yume, and the two held hands. Yume still looked somewhat awed by everything she saw, while Light only smiled casually, happy to finally be with his sister again after so long. The final panel depicts the two holding hands, enveloped in a soft light that illustrates the reunion of the siblings. On the second floor of the giant tower, the atmosphere felt silent yet tense. Inside a large, luxurious room with long curtains and dim candlelight, Princess Lilith was sitting comfortably on a soft chair, looking at her faithful, bespectacled maid, Nono. They were discussing an important meeting about the future of humanity and the political direction of the giant tower. Lilith looked slightly annoyed, feeling that the previous meeting had been too dull and had yielded nothing meaningful. In her opinion, the discussion about the absolute independence of humanity should have been covered more deeply, especially since the major inspection was scheduled for the next day. Nono, who was usually responsive, merely nodded slightly, looking a bit tired. Lilith then continued the conversation with a more serious tone. Lilith recounted her first impression of the giant tower sorcerer she had briefly met earlier. The figure always covered her face with a veil, making her hard to read. But from the sorcerer's demeanor and way of speaking, Lilith could feel an extraordinary authority. She also mentioned that the room in the giant tower was far more luxurious than the human royal palace. In fact, in her opinion, both the knights and the servants here possessed incredible abilities. They all looked trained, intelligent, and very polite. Lilith also acknowledged that the giant tower sorcerer was truly powerful, as the rumors suggested, possessing dragons and rare transfer items. Lilith couldn't even estimate the true extent of power and resources the tower possessed. While lost in thought, Lilith suddenly realized that Nono had fallen asleep on the sofa. Seeing this, Lilith sighed softly, as it was rare for Nono to fall asleep in the middle of an important conversation. She was probably just exhausted after dealing with so many events lately. Lilith then called another servant in the room, Yume Shadow, and asked how she was. Yume Shadow, the shadow figure mimicking the original Yume, looked cheerful while sitting near the table. The shadow appeared to be enjoying a small snack on the table. Yume Shadow explained casually that the candy on the table tasted really good, although the tea was a bit bitter, so she added a little sugar and milk. Although only a clone, Yume Shadow mimicked the original Yume's habits very well, even down to small details like the way she tasted tea. Yume Shadow then looked at Lilith and gave a small piece of advice to the princess not to buy excessively expensive things. According to her, it would be better if the money was used to buy candy for the children at the orphanage. Lilith chuckled faintly upon hearing this, because she hadn't expected the shadow could act exactly like the original Yume, even in her way of thinking. Lilith was even amazed, because despite being the result of magic, the clone was very difficult to distinguish from the original. Amidst the slightly relaxed atmosphere, Lilith and her entourage were treated to a dinner party at the giant tower. The dishes served were truly luxurious, ranging from giant roasted chicken to various fresh seafood arranged neatly on a long table. Lilith and Prince Kuro, sitting next to her, were equally surprised by the magnificence of the banquet. The sorcerer of the giant tower, likely Mei or Ellie, politely explained that the feast was prepared specifically to welcome them and requested they enjoy the dishes without hesitation. Upon tasting the food, Lilith immediately fell silent in awe. All the ingredients tasted fresh and sweet, without the usual fishy or pungent odors found in typical human kingdom food. The vegetables, meat, and seafood had an extraordinarily balanced flavor. Lilith even mentioned that everything she ate tasted like a heavenly meal, especially the cheesecake, which was soft and sweet. Even though Lilith previously didn't like cheese much, this time she asked for seconds. She felt slightly embarrassed, worried that she might appear impolite in front of the giant tower's sorcerer, and even panicked, imagining that the host might deem her unfit to form a partnership. Sometime later, Lilith returned to her room to rest. However, soon after lying down, she heard the sound of someone arriving late at night. Lilith was startled and immediately got up. The figure who arrived was none other than the giant tower's sorcerer, but this time, without a veil. Lilith was momentarily stunned to see her true face, as behind the veil was a beautiful young woman with a strong aura. The sorceress introduced herself as Ellie, one of the servants of her master, Light. Ellie explained that Light wanted to meet Princess Lilith privately to express his gratitude. Lilith was confused why only she was asked to come, but Ellie assured her there was absolutely no ill intention. Ellie then told Lilith something that surprised her. It turned out that Yume, the young maid who had been with her all this time, was Light's biological sister. Light had been searching for Yume for a long time, and thanks to Lilith taking in and protecting Yume, they were finally able to locate her. Because of this, Light wanted to personally convey his thanks. Ellie also explained Light's family background. Yume once had 2 older brothers who left the village before the major attack occurred. Her eldest brother ran away with Yume when their village was attacked, and they had been separated ever since. Yume's parents were merely poor farmers, so Lilith found it hard to believe how her brother could now be the master of the giant tower's sorceress. For security reasons, Ellie explained that the Yume currently with Lilith was actually a substitute, the result of the UR double shadow magic. The original version had been taken to a safe place. Hearing this, Lilith was half stunned. But Ellie explained that the clone was made to be so similar that it was hard to distinguish from the original, both in speech, gestures, and even memories. Ellie added that this power, if used wisely, could change the future of humanity. After explaining everything, Ellie said it was time for them to move. It would be impolite to keep Light waiting too long. Lilith, still a bit nervous, asked for a moment to change clothes, as she couldn't meet a great master in her pajamas. After dressing neatly, Ellie put her veil back on and ensured everything was ready. Calmly, Ellie activated a secret transfer magic and brought Lilith away. In an instant, their room changed into a mysterious place filled with blue light and magical carvings on the walls. Lilith was momentarily stunned, seeing the inner interior of the tower that felt like a combination of a dungeon and a majestic palace. They walked down a long corridor until they finally arrived at the giant tower's main room. There, Lilith saw a line of servants and subordinates standing neatly on both sides of a grand staircase. There was Mei, the maid, Nazuna, the vampire knight, and several other strong figures whose auras were equally intimidating. At the end of the staircase, on the main throne, sat a young boy who appeared to be around 12 years old. However, upon looking at him, Lilith immediately realized that the boy was no ordinary human. The aura emanating from Light's body was not just power, but something that made her soul tremble. Ellie, standing beside Lilith, gave a sharp look and asked Lilith to be more respectful in the presence of her master. The atmosphere in the room slowly changed. The air felt heavy, and a dense, black aura began to appear around the throne. From behind the darkness, the shadow of a giant monster emerged, staring intently at Lilith. Large writing seemed carved in the air, implying the truth that had been hidden all this time. That Light was not just the master of the giant tower, but a figure known as the monster of all monsters, the embodiment of unimaginable despair and power.